転生
What if Naruto was the Spectres of the Forgotten on Twilight Part 3? Spectres of the Forgotten by Daniel de Cobre. Chapter 3. Orn Library. Arthur Parker was practically dead when Naruto came back to his senses and saw him lying on the mottled gray carpet of his office. The shinobi wasted no time. Rippled patterns emerged from the now light purple sclera and iris of his eyes, a golden shroud of warm and bright chakra then engulfed his body. Using his six-path sage power combined with the immense raw energies of the Jubi, he endeavored to pull the head librarian's essence from the netherworld and was successful. Once the scholar was revived, Naruto then cast a genjutsu to erase the horrors which the former have been subjected to. Are you all right, Arthur? Naruto inquired as he saw his friend's eyes slowly open. Yes. What happened? I can't help but feel this indescribable fear, like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't remember. Dr. Parker said in a weary voice, still dazed. Though Naruto erased his memories, the fear still lingered like embers from a great conflagration. What happened to your eyes? He then queried curiously as he saw the blonde's Rinnegan. I'll explain later. The important thing is that you're fine now. Naruto said as he turned his attention to his mentor's journal. He then formed a seal of confrontation and cast a powerful genjutsu through his Rinnegan, followed by an even more potent fuinjutsu that he hoped to seal the horrific lore contained within it. The writings on the said journal waned and dwindled until it was once again a collection of blank pages bound by a leather cover. As both men were about to let out a sigh of relief, an ominous prodigy occurred. The fuinjutsu Naruto cast upon the journal can't seem to fully complete its sequence, as if the arcane balefulness of its contents is fighting back, preventing it from being enclosed by the sealing formula. The fuinjutsu then inexorably shattered and the journal's leaves began to turn rapidly like a deck of cards being shuffled. Then from its dexter hinge a strange rune formed and black liquescent matter began to gush in a sudden torrent, swiftening and deepening as it poured incessantly. Naruto and Dr. Parker was horrified, with the latter opted to pull a revolver hidden on his desk as the black tarry liquid began to morph into a horrific blob that transformed into one of the strange alien creature they saw earlier from the phantasmagoric vision. It looked parallel to an immense fish-like amphibian, resembling a bizarre eel with long, tubular and segmented body, as well as a tail at one end and two fins near the head and another along the back. A little bit back from the head are four long tentacles, two sprout from across each other on the top, and two more of the same on the underbelly. The creature is called Bakunawa, one of the numerous semi-sentient entities that drift along the infinite dimensional layers of outer God's realm, feeding on the ambient psychic energies of the immaterial plane. It would seem that creature locked on the vast psychic presence of the Jubi within Naruto, which was like a potent shining beacon drawing it. It then crossed the barriers into the mundane reality humans occupy through the journal, using it as a portal. Being a multi-dimensional entity by nature, it continuously phased itself in and out between dimensions as it flew around the library, passing through solid objects like a specter. From a mortal's point of view, it appeared to be moving in a spasmodic manner, fluttering in brief irregular bursts of movements. Abruptly, the Bakunawa flew upwards, coursing through the walls and roof the building unhindered. It then convulsed and coiled itself into a tight ball, releasing a blinding light and deafening sound that briefly benumbed Naruto's senses and caused Dr. Parker to lose consciousness from the all-out sensory assault. Due to the immense psychic energies released by billions of human minds, the creature evolved into a vast dragon-like entity with a pair of sweeping wings on its serpentine body, one of which was massive enough to encompass the entire building as they spread, while the smaller pair was located just aback its larger counterpart. Damn it! Naruto cursed. The expression on his face was grim and severe, glaring darkly on the creature. He then formed a mini-tailed beast ball and was about to launch it on the Bakunawa when the creature suddenly evaporated into a vapor-like form. It then latched itself into the shinobi, manifesting as a dragon-like mark akin to that of a tattoo that spiraled on his left forearm. Oh, what just happened? Naruto pondered with a comical expression on his face. It would seem that it likes you, kid. Kurama grinned then answered him in a gruff voice. So it decided to become an accessory? Naruto queried. He's fully aware of what's happening but for some reason wanted to tease the fox. You can use it as a personal summon, you dope. Kurama replied, starting to get annoyed. Cool. Naruto acted overly delighted, like a child who just set foot inside of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. In reply, Kurama scoffed with a loud, PFF'd. Is that jealousy I sniff? Naruto once again arched with a cheeky grin on his face. Screw you, you blonde idiot. Kurama sneered as he realized the shinobi's trolling. Naruto burst into a loud belly laugh, slapping his thighs from the amusement of seeing the fox's exasperated expression. Naruto, is everything alright? What happened to that thing? Dr. Parker, who just regained his consciousness, inquired with a quivering voice. Don't worry about it, Arthur. Everything is alright now. Though you might want to lock your grandfather's journal somewhere more secure. Naruto replied in a gentle voice, flashing an easy smile that conveyed his reassurance. Forks. The next day. As Bella woke up, she was greeted by a beam of light emanating from the window of her room. Immediately rising from her bed, she then gazed into the transparent glass and saw that the skies were clear and it was strangely sunny. It made her feel blissful as she felt the golden warm rays gently touched her skin, but the weather has also ushered some glum and dejection as she realized that she won't be seeing Edward today due to the same ironic circumstance. At school, Mike ceaselessly and obsessively followed Bella all day up until government class like a golden retriever. Constantly trying to make amends for upsetting her the other day and at the same time duplicitously lulling her away from Edward and into his arms. Eventually, it became too tiresome that she just decided to just be magnanimous. Great. Now for the other one. Bella thought while letting out a sigh of exasperation as she walked the corridors to biology. She was pertaining to Alex, who will surely be as persistent as Mike is. Frankly, she already had her day's quota of importunate people and her vexation is only exacerbated by the fact of Edward's absence. As Bella entered the classroom, she indeed saw the young man who didn't seem to notice her, for he was reading a curious-looking tome. He was wearing a light Henley tee that fit him snugly, emphasizing his muscular chest and overall well-built body. This, coupled with the young man's imperious good looks, has distracted Bella and, being naturally clumsy, tripped and crashed over Alex, who was equally flabbergasted by it all. Are you alright, Bella? Alex asked awkwardly in a rather sheepish and shy voice. Yeah, Bella replied in the same tone, blushing. You know, Alex, she'll probably be far better if you actually get off of her. Mike sneered. That made the two realize the awkward position they're in. Their faces were dangerously close to each other and everyone in the room was staring at them. I mean, come on. This is so unfair. It's a good thing he's so naive, Mike then thought. Why does she get all of the boys' attention around here? Jessica contemptuously and jealously thought. Oh yeah, sorry, Alex diffidently muttered, blushing red as tomato. He would have helped Bella get up, but Mike moved as fast as lightning and beat him to it. Thanks, Bella smiled vaguely as Mike helped her up, deeply uncomfortable from all the unwanted attention, as if each individual stare was like a tiny needle piercing through her skin. What the hell, dude? Mike hissed to Alex in a barely audible voice. I didn't actually plan for that to happen, you know. The young man replied to his friend in the same manner. But you enjoyed it, don't you? Mike said in a doubtful tone and with an incredulous glare. Guilty as charged, Alex just gave him a small nod and a sheepish smile. The room was filled with tumult and rustling murmurs of students talking and chatting to each other since it was still a bit early for class, and there's a note from Mr. Molina that he'll be late today due to an urgent school business, no doubt. Bella. Alex said in a sheepish voice. Yeah, Bella replied, turning her face to the young man. Well, sorry for the way I acted the other day, Alex mumbled in an even more timid tone. It's okay, forget it, Bella said with a gentle smile. Thanks, Alex replied with a much more assuaged expression on his face. So, are we good? He then said with a boyish smile and a double thumbs up that Bella finds genuinely cute. Yeah, we're good, she then chuckled, amused by her seatmate. Let me make it up to you at least. Alex said with a flattering smile. That wouldn't be necessary, Alex, Bella sighed, sensing a Mike Newton 2.0 scene all over again. Come on, tell me your wish, Alex said enthusiastically and with an ebullient smile playing at the edges of his lip. Caught by the statement, Bella was taciturn for a long second. Okay, I wish it rains, she then made her request in a tired voice. She thought it's impossible for the young man to fulfill her demand, and also because a part of her deeply yearns for Edward, who wasn't able to show himself due to the effulgent rays of the sun. So let me get this straight. You're in a town that rains almost year-round, and in the rare chance that the sun shows up you want it gone. Alex amusedly queried. Basically, Bella flirtingly muttered. What am I doing? I can't believe I'm flirting with him, she then an uncomfortable thought. I must say, you never really struck me as an ombrophile, Alex said chuckling. A what? Bella queried with a furrowed brow, thinking that the last word was something inappropriate. A person who loves rain, Alex replied in kind and alluring voice. Look, he then gently pointed Bella to the window behind her. Bella then saw the blue being gracefully blanketed by the imminent billows of cumulonimbus that were spreading uniformly throughout the sky. Its looming shade gradually caused the immediate vicinity to moderately darken. Then droplets of rain began to trickle, falling gently on the plants and flowers, magnifying their natural hues, intensifying their colors to deepen and become more vivid. How did you, flummoxed? Bella asked out of wonderment. I would love to claim the credit, but the truth is it's just a coincidence, Bella, Alex explicated in a gentle voice and with a jovial smile on his face. At the back of his head, however, he was frantic and quite distraught. Oh crap, what have I just done? Why on earth did I agree to this? Now, Emo Dward is gonna show up any time soon to ruin everything. He then thought. As if on cue, Edward walked into the threshold of the classroom door. In actuality, he was always nearby, indiscernibly concealed and watching over Bella as he was quite protective of her. He greeted Bella with a soft smile but was rather dour and cold on Alex, which he eyed quite darkly. Bella's face then livens as she saw Edward, conveying a love that is both perdurable and supernal. Hey, can I ask a favor? Do you mind if Edward and I sit together? Just for today. Bella then turned to her seatmate and asked in a persuading voice coupled with puppy dog eyes that bent the young man to involuntarily comply. Yeah, sure, no problem, he responded somewhat reluctantly and with sad smile. Silently grabbing his backpack, along with the strange book he's reading earlier, then glumly moved to a seat just a few rows behind the couple. Obviously hurt but didn't let anyone notice it. La push, first beach. Base from your stories, Sam sounds a really stuck-up guy, what do you see in him anyway? Emily said in a ponderous voice, handing Leah a sandwich. I don't know. I just love him. Leah answered, unsure. When she and Sam became a couple some time ago, she was definitely certain that she has found a soulmate in him. She loves him like no other, but apparently something has changed, and she couldn't explain nor fathom what it is. How about him? Emily whispered, pertaining to Naruto. I don't know, Leah said in a confounded tone, laying her palms on her face then running it up to her forehead. Suddenly Sam arrived, along with Paul and Jared. The latter two just phased into their wolf forms a couple of weeks ago and the former was acting as their alpha and leader. As soon as Sam saw Emily, a profound and intimate spark ignited deep within his core and filled him with glowing warmth that coursed throughout his body. He then felt unconditionally drawn and ultimately tethered to the young woman as if their spirits were linked by an inseverable celestial bond. Sam, is everything all right? Leah asked, confounded and a bit suspicious of her boyfriend who was staring soulfully at her cousin. Yeah, Sam responded. With great difficulty he severed his gaze from Emily and lied to Leah. Paul and Jared were uncannily silent. Being telepathically linked to one another, privacy is something non-existent and they could hear their alpha's thoughts quite clearly and subtly feel the intense emotions raging through him. Like a sweet irony, Emily, who earlier was quite skeptical and downright sardonic of Sam, became both mute and dumbfounded as she saw the latter. She was immediately filled with an uncanny feeling of wonderment and complete admiration for him, as if love on first sight. Later that day. So does a person have to be dying to become like you? Bella curiously queried as she and Edward was walking just past the forest and into the rocky river banks. No. It's just Carlisle. He'll never do this to someone who has no other choice. Edward responded, albeit hesitant at first. So how long have you been like this? Bella looked up to him and inquired once more. Since 1918. Carlisle found me, dying with Spanish influenza. Edward replied. At that point heavy rain started to pour in cascading showers from the ominous dark clouds that abruptly formed above them. They then heard a thunderous roar from blackened skies and opted to seek shelter, away from the drenching rainfall. What was it like? Bella continued her curious inquiry. The venom was excruciating, but what Carlisle did was much harder. Not many of us has the restraint to do that, Edward replied in grim voice as he reminisced the painful process. But didn't he just have to bite? Bella was muddled and had a hard time choosing the right words for her follow-up question. When we taste human blood, a sort of frenzy begins. It's almost impossible to stop. Edward sighed in a voice that was filled with a strange cadence and fearful tremble. So is Carlisle the real reason why you don't kill people? Bella inquired carefully. No, it's not, I don't want to be a monster. Edward was silent for a while then spoke in a reserved and low voice. My family, we think of ourselves as vegetarians. We only survive on the blood of animals, but it's like a human only living on tofu. It makes you strong but never really fully satisfied. He then looked to Bella with a reassuring smile, then explained his position in an analogy. Are there other vampires out there? Bella continued her long train of questions. Be careful around your new friend Bella. Edward sighed in a mirthless tone. He thought that Alex is a vampire and is the one responsible for Waylon's death, along with the chain of other recent murders. Who? Bella asked, perplexed. Edward didn't answer her question and became silent altogether. The expression on his face turned hard and foreboding. Bella chose not to venture any further and changed the topic. Can the rest of your family read minds like you can? No, it's just me and Naruto, he replied in a much calmer tone. He's interesting. The happiest vampire I've ever seen. Bella said, smiling. Naruto isn't a vampire, Edward chuckled. He's a different kind of immortal, he then told Bella with a trace of smile on his lip. I don't think I understand, Bella said with a confounded expression on her face. He's more like a demigod, part god, part human. He's the oldest among us, older than Carlyle himself and indisputably the most powerful. Even the Volturi flinch by the mere mention of his name. Edward then explained proudly. Okay. I didn't expect that, Bella breathily commented in astonishment. How old is he? And what's a Volturi? She then curiously inquired out of fascination. Guess, Edward replied, holding back a smile behind his lips. Okay, 300. Bella said, more of an inquiry than a deduction. No, Edward replied with a crooked smile. 500, Bella once again guesstimated. Still no, Edward shook his head, smiling. Okay, I give up, Bella sighed in submission. If what I heard from Carlyle is true, then Naruto is just a little over 10,000 years old. Edward told Bella, that made the latter's eyes widen in both surprise and disbelief. 10,000. Bella gaspingly echoed, stunned. The subject of age bugs him though, so try not to mention it as much as possible when he's around. Edward quipped in a velvety voice that made Bella smile as well. Amidst the light-hearted merriment, their gaze locked gently upon each other like the merging of seasons into an unconquerable force. As Bella soulfully looked through Edward's honey-hued eyes, she could almost see her soul staring back, crooning the irrevocable love she had for him. Time itself seemed slowed down significantly as their faces inexorably get closer and closer to each other. Bella closed her eyes, keenly anticipating for their lips to meet and their souls to converge. Out of the blue, however, it started to hail. Pellets of frozen rain started to fall from the clouds that curiously formed with unnatural swiftness. As if things weren't disrupting enough, a particularly large hailstone, the size of a watermelon, plunged from the heavens and darted itself to the back of Edward's head, causing him to stumble and skid face first into the mud and moss-encrusted ground. Due to his vampire physiology, however, the blunt force from the hailstone's impact was far from lethal, but it hurt a lot. Eerily, as Edward was trying to get up from the ground, he could have sworn to have heard a puckish snigger emanating from the forest like the playful rustlings of a mischievous wind. Oh my God. Are you all right? Bella worriedly exclaimed. Yeah, though I'm starting to feel that nature really hates me. Edward replied, dazed and was barely able to stand from the impact-induced stupor and bewilderment. Cullen's residence. Despite the untoward incident earlier, Edward went home with a big smile on his face. It was a strange sight for the other members of the coven, as they are used to his usually stoic and unenthusiastic demeanor. Then Naruto, knowing exactly the reason behind his bronze-haired brother's glee, mischievously decided to tease and prank him a little. Oh hey there, Edward. Naruto said with a fox-like smile on his face. Not this again, Edward nervously thought, having a rather bad omen that things will get really embarrassing, really soon. Hey, he then replied to Naruto with a low voice, expecting one of Naruto's witticisms that always finds him as the most vulnerable victim. Frankly, he hates it. So you and her, huh? Naruto said in a curious tone. Yes, Edward replied unenthusiastically in a near exasperated voice. Cool. Naruto smiled and then left. Edward was flummoxed from the unexpected behavior of Naruto, but was still quite suspicious that the blonde is just biding time and will strike while he least expects it. Few hours lapsed since their conversation, and the golden rays of the sun has subsided and was replaced by the gentle light of the peering moon and stars. Edward then felt a strange and familiar presence as he heard someone knocking at the door. As he opened the wooden portal of their house, he saw Bella standing on the other side. Bella. Edward saw it in a perplexed voice. He was completely caught off guard, and the confused countenance on his face was priceless. What are you doing here? Naruto. He was about to inquire the reason of her visit, but then realized that the person in front of her was Naruto guised as Bella. Suddenly, Bella was engulfed with a puff of smoke, then reverted back to Naruto, who was laughing his heart out from amusement of the prank he just pulled. That look on your face, priceless. Naruto said, chortling, and was apparently about to lose breath from the barely controlled laughter. Yes, very funny, are you done yet? Edward responded in a jaded tone and with a deadpan face, obviously exasperated. Oh come on. Don't be such killjoy man. Give me 5 Casanova. Naruto jubilantly said with that sly fox smile of his. Raising his right hand for a high five. Out of annoyance and perhaps some desire to get back on his golden-haired brother, Edward slammed the door hard on Naruto's face. Ouch! Naruto exclaimed on the Dexter side of the door that made Edward silently smirk. Konoha. 10,000 years ago. The sky was blue as the Caspian Sea. For the first time in many years, Hinata Hyuga, who is now the 6th Hokage, can finally sleep well without the fears and nightmares of the past, for the War of the Elemental Nations has come to an end. The survivors of the plague have decided to unite and rebuild their destroyed lives and settlements, not as fractionalized individuals, clans or villages, but as a single people. Naruto-kun, I wish you were here. I wish you could see the fruition of our dreams. So much blood has been spilled, but at last, it's over now, we'll finally have peace. She nostalgically pondered, holding a red scarf that she knitted years ago while looking at the superbly towering statue of the shinobi from the Hyuga clan's estate. She remembered the pain all too well, like it was yesterday. Years ago her father, Hiyashi Hyuga, favored her younger sister Hanabi as the primary heir of the Hyuga clan over her, and worst still, he has also deemed Hinata a failure and a lost cause, unfit to bear the Hyuga name and a disgrace to the clan. She then reminisced the days when she slowly lost faith in herself and would spend her time alone, crying. This, however, changed one snowy day. While preparing to enroll into the academy, a group of bullies beleaguered and degraded her due to her Byakugan. Suddenly there was this young and rambunctious blonde boy who refused to stand idle by while the bullies insult her and unflinchingly came to her defense. However, since the bullies outnumber her defender, they trounced him badly and trampled over his scarf. One of the only few earthly possessions he had. This profound event has changed Hinata's life and made her not only able to feel an utmost admiration for Naruto but also was able to relate to his pains and strong desire to be acknowledged and praised, since they were both considered outcasts by the people around them. She was also amazed that despite having nothing and no one to rely on, Naruto never gave up in believing he could become something great like the Hokage. Inspired by his determination, Hinata decided to try her best to become strong so she could be acknowledged as well, and adopted his conviction of never giving up. Her admiration for Naruto eventually grew into love, despite warnings from her elders to stay away from him. For years it has been her desire to give the red scarf that she painstakingly knit to Naruto not only as a token of gratitude for defending her years ago but also as the ultimate expression of her purest love for him. However, every time she attempted to do so it ends up in usually awkward situations with the clueless blonde. Reminiscing all the awkward moment of her childhood made Hinata both smile gently and tears fell from her eyes out of nostalgia and the pain of realizing that she will never see her friends again, for all of them perished during the Third Shinobi World War. Suddenly Hinata felt a looming presence. Activating her Byakugan, she then shifted to her gentle fist stance and prepared to combat the intruder. Turning around, she saw a rather good-looking young man with iridescent deep blue eyes leaning on the threshold of her room, coldly staring at her with an equally cold smile on his face. After all this years you're still carrying a torch. How quaint. The young man said in mockery of her love for Naruto. You know nothing. Hinata exclaimed in defense. Obviously not. He smirked sardonically. You gave him the gift of your love and got nothing in return. Bitter, isn't it? He then continued to deride her. Who are you? Hinata demanded with a suspicious glower. Does it matter? The young man replied, nonchalantly. Lady Hokage. An Anbu exclaimed as he and his squad rushed to her aid. You interrupted our discussion. How rude. The displeased young man said with a demonic voice. He then cupped his right hand, then gracefully raised it to the heavens that caused the sky to roar with thunder and flash upon flash, blaze with lightning. The Anbus were then violently launched into the air as countless reticulating bolts of lightning struck and incinerated them as they ascend. All that remained of the elite ninjas were flurrying hot clouds of ashes that were quickly scattered by the whistling gush of wind. Behold the fate of all heroes. The young man then laughed maniacally. Genuinely amused by the wanton murder he committed. However, in spite of his cold-blooded demeanor, the young man possessed a quality that is most confounding. Like an enigmatic force that no one could resist, working his enchantments upon any human with the fatal music of his voice. For a moment he made Hinata forget everything. She could only listen to him, and love him, and be his slaves, to do with him as he would. He made her drunk with the joy of being with him, and of looking into the heaven of his eyes, and of feeling the ecstasy that thrilled along her veins from the touch of his hand. Then the image of Naruto flashed before her eyes that made her claim back her almost lost volition and saw the horrific reality. Hinata was frozen in fear as she witnessed the squadrons of Anbu and countless other Leaf shinobi effortlessly extinguished by the young man. She was stunned in horrific astonishment as she saw the young man's skin began to shimmer akin to his eerie glowing eyes while being gradually engulfed in a fiery blue-white aura that seemed to break down and shatter the very concept of reality before him. A great platinum halo etched with unknown gleaming runes, and eternally burning with iridescent flames of emerald and azure suddenly materialized and hovered above his head like a crown. While numerous flickering orbs of energy that looked like miniature stars continuously formed and oscillate ever so brightly and dazzling, revolving and orbiting around him in a graceful elliptical motion. Subsequently, long streams of light began to sprout from the young mont's back and grew into long appendages coated in the same fiery bluish-white energy. These streams of light flittered gracefully into the air forming what she could best describe as angels' wings. Magnificent as they look, these streams hide a much more sinister purpose as its wielder used them individually as tendrils, binding the attacking ninjas in a tight hold and burning their flesh as if it's being coiled by great filaments heated to white incandescence, then slamming their charred corpses with immense force sufficient to create small craters upon impacting the earth. Hinata then found herself along with the mysterious stranger hovering high above Konoha. She beheld the village's buildings lessen and sink beneath her. It seemed that she and the young man flew skyward to a prodigious height, and she peered down across the rooftops of her own estate, upon the houses, the tilled fields and the forest beyond, and the blood-tinted sun brought low on its verge. And Hinata grew giddy, and the chill airs of the upper heavens blew upon her. She was soon dumbfounded with trepidation as she saw the village along with the distraught and panic-stricken people below her feet. "What are you?" Hinata gaspingly inquired, awe-stricken. "Believe me. You don't want to know how many answers that question have." The young man turned his gaze upon his horrified onlooker and replied in a tranquil but eerie echoing voice. He then held his hand and with an indolent flick of his wrist the entire landscape was suddenly filled with a dense unearthly fog and darkness fluttered in the air like a celestial shadow steadily quenching the sun's light. Out of the mists opened a great luminous chasm that seemed to ignore the laws of physics as it distorts and warped the fabric of space-time. From the portal, emerged a titanic pillar of white flame of intolerable intensity and within it are shadowy figures of the worst nightmares of humanity brought into existence and projected into reality by the baleful power of the outer gods Mentiphori. Hinata watched in horror as she saw the villagers devoured, mutilated and massacred by the macabre monstrosities that the dark deity has unleashed upon them. She begged him to show compassion as she saw the gruesome fate that descended upon her people. She saw men, women, young and old shrieking in pain and horror, supplicating in anguish, and dying in the most horrific and unspeakable ways imaginable. Her pleas however were ignored and brushed off, instead the young man flashed an enigmatic boyish smile in reply. "There is a storm now and an earthquake if you like, you must stand aside, out of danger." He then said smirking in amusement at the sight of her shocked and horrified expression, as if the cruel carnage wasn't anything beyond mere entertainment to him. Out of the pitch-black firmaments, bolts of infernal flame shone red and fierce as they darted like burning projectiles, blasting everything they impacted into utter ruin, along with arcs of lightning that surreally cascaded continuously from the skies like bright pylons of pure destruction. Instantly, it seemed that great ebon clouds of thunder beetled against the sun. Lining the horizon, the clouds took the form of colossal monsters with heads and members somewhat resembling hydras. Rearing terribly, they trod down the sun like an extinguished ember. They then rose higher and vaster, coming towards Konoha. Deep, calamitous rumblings preceded them, and the earth shook visibly. Hinata saw that these were not immaterial clouds, but actual living forms that had come forth to tread the world in macrocosmic vastness. Throwing their shadows for many leagues before them, the vile entities charged unstoppable into the land of fire, and their feet descended like falling mountain crags upon far oases and towns of the outer landscape. Then immense fissures opened and both the living and the dead were swallowed by the unforgiving earth. "Why are you doing this?" Hinata tearfully queried in aghast. "I have heard their prayers of equality and peace and thus I have come to fulfill their heart's desire." The young man said in a voice that was strangely sincere, free from neither malice nor ill will. Hinata couldn't believe what she just heard nor how the enigmatic stranger says them with such innocence and blamelessness. You murdered them. She then replied in a voice filled with rage and agony. And granted their wish. Is there anything more peaceful than walking on a planet of a billion corpses? Is there not a more supernal equalizer than death? The young man coldly replied, again without any trace malevolence in his voice. To this Hinata was taciturn. She then stood and beheld the ruining that was brought to her people. Do not fret, for I have wrought well for the entirety of the human race, though it doesn't look like it on the surface. Your race never really knew good fortune form ill, always mistaking one for the other. The dark god said in a pleasant voice. I can sense a nostalgic longing in you. Might that be love for him who you shall never see again? He then inquired. His head was slightly tilting and there was a slightly perplexed countenance on his face. You know nothing about love. Hinata exclaimed as she tried to attack with her eighth trigrams. Air Pombat was blasted by an unfathomably condensed wave of invisible force that broke 3 of her ribs and caused a bone fragment to perforate one of her lungs. The outer god then turned to her with his glowing eyes that burned like dying azure stars at the hour of their culmination. Very well. You shall see your beloved Naruto once again, 10,000 years from this day. Then we shall see the perdurability of your much vaunted love. He then said in an alluringly penetrating voice that was like the unparalleled elegance of the soft luminescence from long-dead stars that traveled into the vastness of the void and shone its radiance to a fledgling world. The outer god then outstretched his arm and from his palm casually unleashed a powerful wave of crimson energy that expanded in all directions and washed away everything on the planet's surface and the surrounding space around it, propagating throughout the stretch of the solar system. The potent energy wave nullified chakra itself and atomized every organism and construct that has been touched by chakra, reducing all their matter into its basic elemental components. Bereft of chakra that powers and sustains it since time immemorial, the elemental nations shattered and its fragments sunk violently like ingots of lead into the dark abyss of the harsh ocean. All that remained of its legacy were a handful of survivors that mysteriously found themselves in ships without any memory nor knowledge of the nature of their transport to the said vessels. The strange ships were built in an alien style, with elongated hulls and delicate woodwork. Without mast nor sails but sliced into the waters autonomously without any of them able to control its bearing. One of the ships sailed west while the other navigated east and landed into an archipelago known today as modern Japan. Hinata, who was aboard on one of these ships, saw the remnants of the elemental nations as it crumbled and sunk asunder into the watery depths along with the prodigious destruction of the moon which imploded then reformed surreally like a dream. Azure eyes opened and gazed upon the skies that were clear and blue as if a mirror image of the astral sea, along with the rustling and undulating grass fields which danced in graceful waves from the tender blowing soft breeze. Naruto then found himself laying blissfully on a soft meadow that was perfumed by the sweet-smelling wild blooms that riddled the scenery. He felt the flowing rays of the autumnal sun that bathed his skin with its gold and pleasant warmth, and could almost hear the saccharine melody of nature's mesmerizing song. Everything was profoundly resplendent and supernal, and his senses were gradually set adrift into a state of heavenly splendor and soul-pacifying equanimity. Surreally, the sun abruptly subsided and like a clockwork celestial calendar in a planetarium the sky dimmed and the bright sunlight was interchanged by the opalesque luminescence of the ashen moon and iridescent glints of the innumerable stars that boldly declared themselves into the heavens. Suddenly out of the adjacent forest he saw a magnificent white wolf appear from its depths, then gracefully glided towards him, slowly threading its paws into the firefly-lit trail that shimmered mesmerizingly like glittering crystals of sunlight-touched snow. He then stretched his hand and felt the soft fur of the magnificent creature who tilted its face into his palm as if in reciprocation of the affectionate gesture. The wolf's eyes then widened and with a gush of wind it immediately shed its skin and transformed into a pulchritudinous woman of unparalleled grace and elegance, and she's naked. Naruto was astounded as the beautiful dame raised her face and he saw someone familiar. It was Hinata Hyuga, staring soulfully at him with her distinctive white eyes and a gentle smile. Hinata. Naruto stutteringly muttered as he beheld the Hyuga, whose swaying long beautiful ebon hair served as the only cover to her voluptuous body. Naruto then took of his jacket and used it to cover Hinata's bare physique, then hugged her ardently. Naruto-kun, Hinata replied in a voice that was sweet as the nectar of the mythical lotus tree. Her eyes became lively and her face was filled with imponderable amounts of joy. Dude, wake up, she then said in a gruff and manly voice. Say what now? Naruto queried in a shocked voice and with a dumbfounded and confused countenance in his face. I said make love to me, my handsome shinobi. Hinata said passionately with a gentle smile on her face as she closed her eyes and puckered her lips. Without a second thought, Naruto took Hinata in his arms and kissed her torridly with the burning white intensity of 1,000 suns. As their lips locked, Naruto smoothly slid his tongue into her mouth and started exploring it and massaging her tongue with his. It was the epiphany of nirvana, Naruto thought. What the foo? Naruto heard once again the same gruff and manly voice, but he decided to ignore it until the said voice became muddled and muffled as if the person of which it belongs to was struggling in vehement protest. He then slickly moved his hand towards her ample bosom, but strangely they fell hard to the touch, like the pectoral muscle of a bodybuilder. The shinobi then heard Rosalie screaming in aghast. Subsequently, Hinata along with the surreal landscape fogged up and disintegrated like a dream. It then turned out that all of it is indeed just a dream, conjured by his forlorn heart that yearned to see Hinata once more. As his senses and volition returned to the waking world, however, an extremely awkward if not downright embarrassing scenario greeted him. Naruto found himself Frenching Emmett, who was struggling to escape his tight clutch. The latter originally went to his room to wake him up, but thinking it was Hinata from his dreams, Naruto unwittingly hugged him in an inescapable embrace and unconsciously proceeded to an open-mouthed tongue kiss, much to the horror of Emmett, who tearily and desperately struggled to escape the blonde's adamantine grasp, but to no avail since Naruto is much stronger than he is. As Naruto fully realized the uncomfortable scenario, he quickly and comically jumped away from Emmett and vice versa. Then both boys screamed in horror as they frantically wiped their tongues with their bare hands in a sad yet comedic manner. As if things weren't bad enough, he then turned to the door and saw the rest of the Cullens with a stunned and dumbfounded expression on their faces. Their jaws were completely slacked and their eyes widened like dinner plates out of shock and disbelief, with Rosalie being the worst affected of them all. The poor girl would have fainted from the traumatic experience if it isn't biologically impossible for a vampire to do so. Naruto, what the hell? Rosalie furiously exclaimed in protest as the haze from her mind dissipated. What? I'm sorry, alright. You know damn well I didn't. I never wanted for that to happen. Naruto frantically exclaimed back in his defense. Why do I feel so molested? Emmett muttered in a deadpan voice. Yeah, well that makes the both of us. Naruto then continued. Tell that to your boner, Emmett said, pointing at Naruto's bulge. He knew that it was indeed an accident, but decided to squeeze some fun out of the awkward situation anyway to get even to his blonde siblings' constant wisecracking pranks. That's not for you, Yano. Naruto hysterically yelled. Now I feel molested and then rejected. Emmett said glumly, followed by a false sigh. At the back of his head, however, he was laughing out loud from Naruto, who've just gone completely hysterical and quite nearly paranoid from the profound embarrassment. He then felt a bit of fear himself as he looked over his shoulder and saw Rosalie's penetrating angry glare directed towards both Naruto and him. Forks High School. Well, I suppose I'm still lucky that this day proceeded surprisingly well despite that fiasco earlier. Naruto thought as he was answering a trigonometry problem on the board while the rest of the girls in the room were blushing red, for they were so enamored by his good looks. Then the bell rang and it was lunch. The same girls hovered around Naruto like flies as he walked towards the school cafeteria. He saw his siblings on their usual table along with Bella, who sat with Edward. Hey guys, what's up? Naruto greeted them jovially and exuberantly. He would have teased Edward, but given the situation that occurred earlier, he opted not to. As he turned his gaze into the old table where Bella used to sit, he saw Mike and Alex conversing about an unpleasant subject that probably involves Edward and his relationship with Bella. Looks like Tweedleperv and Tweedledurk has something in mind. I wonder what pathetic nonsense they're up to now. He then thought as he looked incredulously at the pair of boys with a deadpan expression on his face. Based from his observation, Naruto concluded that Mike Newton is one of those jealous pervert type, and for some twisted reason he could relate to him in a degree, being once a pervert himself and competed for the affection of a girl against a guy that everyone think was much cooler. Then there is Alex Storm, which he and the rest of the Cullens were suspicious about. He never really forgotten nor forgave the young man's remark towards him being a solid believer, though there was more to it than that. Unlike his other siblings, Naruto didn't think that Alex was a vampire. He, however, never really liked him for some reason he couldn't comprehend. The shinobi also speculates that the naive and merry demeanor of the latter is just a facade that veiled his more calculating and dangerous nature. Naruto then surreptitiously observed the two and read their lips as they conversed with each other. You know what's the first thing I did when I found out that Bella is dating that freak Cullen? Mike said indignantly in a gruff voice. You charged weary and alone back to your room, then touched yourself all day in false hopes that everything will change for the better as you relieved yourself while you glumly fondled with that picture of Bella you stole. That doesn't even do her justice. Alex said in a dry tone and nearly monotonous voice. What? No. You creep. Mike vehemently denied his friend's assessment, but at the back of his head he was anxious and edgy, for it was accurate down to the last detail. If you say so, friend, Alex then replied tranquilly in the same perfunctory and desultory tone and disinterested voice without looking back to Mike, for his somewhat stoic and low-spirited stare was fixed on Bella and Edward. What even makes you come up with that kind of sick assumption? Mike curiously queried Alex with regards to his earlier statement, retaining the outraged rouse in his voice. Just a hunch, Alex then said with a cheeky smile on his face as he turned his attention to Mike. Okay, that was actually funny, Naruto thought, sniggering. Though on the other hand, those two losers are so pathetic that even I can't help but feel a bit sorry for them. He then muttered inaudibly as he slowly shook his head. Scanning for cute boys. Rosalie scoffed and at the same time teased Naruto. Oh come on Rosalie. We already talked about this, yeah? No. Naruto exasperatedly exclaimed, that made everyone on the table snigger in amusement, especially Alice and Jasper. Those two are actually really nice once you get to know them. If you want I can hook you up with either one of them. Bella quipped, trying to suppress a smirk but wasn't able to hold it for long. Ah, not you too, Bella, Naruto sighed, then gloomily sulked in a corner. He'll get along with Newton just fine since both of them are closet perverts. Come to think of it, same goes with that weirdo Storm. You affectionately referred to him as pretty boy and stud muffin more than once. Right. Edward bantered with a smile playing at the edge of his lip. Look who's talking, at least I don't break into other people's house and watch them while they sleep. How twisted is that for your discriminating taste? Naruto retorted, crossing his arms and childishly muttered in a voice that was too faint for Bella to hear but was perfectly audible to the rest of the Cullens, which made them snicker. Later that day, at the luxuriant and lichen-wreathed forests that surrounded the edge of Forks, in a dell where the golden rays of the autumnal sun penetrated the looming canopies of towering trees, there stood a magnificent large white wolf. It was panting, catching its breath, for not too long ago it just eluded its pursuers who were urgently trying to project their thoughts into its mind, endeavoring to calm it down. Suddenly, the wolf heard the thoughts of its pursuers as they tried to locate it, and so the beast ran, sprinting in speeds that would have left a sports car dead in the dust, only stopping when it was absolutely certain that the others are too far behind to catch up. As this fateful chase took place, Naruto was deep in the forest doing his best to unwind from the dreary day, lying blissfully at the soft grass of a viridian glade where the sweet-smelling flowers of autumn sporadically bloom in lush abundance. Suddenly the shinobi felt a strange and oddly familiar presence as he took notice the rustling of bushes. Then from the myrtle-shaded shrub sprang a white wolf similar to the one he saw in his dream the night before. For a moment Naruto was stunned by its majesty, for it was an amazing creature to behold, with fur akin to that of freshly fallen snow and regal magnificence possessed only by nature's noblest of creations. A Quileute shape-shifter, huh? I haven't seen one of them for quite some time now. Naruto deducted the nature of the creature as it cautiously walked amidst the coniferous yews and red cedar trees, heading towards his direction, sniffing his scent and discerning if he is either friend or foe. Naruto then extended his hand to show that he meant it no harm, but the wolf misinterpreted the gesture and fall back to a defensive stance, growling fiercely at him. Okay, easy. I'm not going to hurt you, Naruto said gently in reassurance, but it hasn't quelled the beast's rage, so he decided to cast a genjutsu to calm it down. Nihon Shoujo no Jutsu, Naruto exclaimed as he folded his hands into a tiger seal. Suddenly the wolf beheld a shower of white illusory feathers. Its eyes began to get heavy and drowsy as the soft falling plumes fluttered and began to pile up. The Quileute shape-shifter tried to resist the hypnotic spell, but to no avail. The desire to sleep was instinctive and there was no fighting it. Eventually, it succumbed to the Eden-like bliss of the jutsu and inexorably fell into a tranquil slumber. Naruto was then dumbfounded as the wolf started to collapse and revert into its human form, transforming back into a beautiful woman, and not just any woman, it was someone he knew. Leah, Naruto gaspingly muttered as he quickly caught her in his arms and gazed upon her face. The shinobi then felt something he can't explain deep within every fiber of his being, like a bright and warm flame that has been reignited after centuries of long musty inertness. An element of vague but compelling disquietude has now mingled with his curiosity as he held in his arms the naked Quileute dame, of whom he felt a special significance, a concern that was incomprehensibly personal and intimate. Then in a moment of reeling and whirling confusion, it seemed to him that sometime or somewhere he knew and loved her, though it was beyond the capacity of his cognizance to remember when or where. Then through his six-path sage power Naruto opted to peer inside of Lea's mind. He knew well that aside from being in proximity with a vampire, extreme emotional distress was also an efficacious catalyst to initiate a shapeshifter's transformation into his wolf form. Naruto felt a bit of shame for desecrating the privacy of someone else's mind, but as a shinobi of the hidden leaf he was tempered to extract intel any way necessary. Also he was thrilled with a strange excitement from a feeling of some momentous revelation he couldn't fully comprehend. Surreally, a peculiar hallucination seized Naruto as he examined the memories of Leah. He beheld how the latter's lingering suspicion from her sudden breakup with Sam culminated into an extremely painful realization as one day she saw her trusted cousin in the arms of the man she loved, and still love. She felt betrayed, unloved and inadequate. This pain focused itself inwardly into a maelstrom of unbearable emotional torment and projected itself outwardly, changing her physical form. Suddenly, Leah's body started shaking as if afflicted by a violent convulsion. Her bones painfully broke then grew afresh, refitting itself over a new animalistic frame as she changed into her wolf form. Her mind then ran amok from the sensory overload as her newly enhanced senses took her by surprise. A terrible perturbation possessed her. Her very sense of identity and humanity was troubled. She was adrift in a sea of stormy confusion, of disoriented thoughts and amplified painful memories. The feral rage grew as if a feeble flame that fed itself in secret from all the torment and pain was now a great conflagration that consumes everything in its path. Then it would seem that all the agony, confusion and anger found a focal point as her piercing glare caught the image of Emily. With mindless rage she attacked her cousin implacably, clawing her face with feral wrath, nearly killing her too if it weren't for Sam who instantly phased into his wolf form and grappled her while simultaneously using his alpha voice to calm her down. The cloud of rage in Leah's mind abruptly subsided like an ebbing tide and she beheld her horrified cousin with half of her face badly wounded from the clawing she received. Leah was then filled with confounding lamentation and remorse. Shocked from what she had done she decided to run away, running as fast as she could out of shame and regret. Carver Cafe. Mike and Alex usually hang out at Carver Cafe every Wednesday after school, for they know that Bella and Charlie eat out their dinner on that restaurant, on that particular day, every week. The two boys waited patiently but Bella nor Charlie didn't come that day and it frustrated them. Their woe was further exacerbated when they found out from Angela that Edward took Bella to meet his family. Evidently the anguish quickly converted itself into a jealousy-fueled wrath that especially afflicted Mike, making him wish all sorts of misfortune towards Edward and the rest of the Cullens. "Arg, I hope Cullen fall of a cliff or something," Mike annoyingly exclaimed in rebuke of the romance between Bella and Edward. "So you want him disposed now?" Alex queried with a somewhat evil look in his eyes. "If only that's possible," Mike sighed, crossing his arms and looking away. "You know, there is a way," Alex said in shady voice while grinning cunningly like a demon. "What do you mean?" Mike asked with a perplexed expression on his face. "My family has made its modern-day fortune through the development and sale of advanced military technologies since the Middle Ages, and being the primary heir, I have access to the most cutting edge of such technologies," he said in an astute voice akin to that of a seasoned businessman as he took off his necklace from which hanged a small kite-shaped pendant etched with the coat of arms of House de Sanguinis. At the back of which was a biometric scanner where the young man placed his right thumb, activating a hidden mechanism that caused the dexter and sinister sides of the pendant to split, revealing itself to be a high-tech looking device of some sort with a red disc-like button in the middle. "What's that?" Mike again inquired in both wonderment and a bit of trepidation. "Well, you see, dinner the Cullens had last week was laced with a complement of a powerful nanotech explosive one of our scientists developed a few years back. The devices should have settled well in their intestinal tracts by now and upon detonation would turn Edward and his family inside out. This transmitter is the interface to initiate the said process with but a push of a button," Alex explained in the same shrewd manner while the crooked grin on his face noticeably widened. "So what will it be, my friend?" He then continued but was cut off when Mike suddenly grabbed the transmitter from his hand and unflinchingly pressed the button without any hesitation. To Mike's surprise, however, the device released a small yet powerful electrical shock that made him jump from his seat like a startled cat. "What the heck, dude? That hurt like hell," he then hissed, lividly. "Well, serve you right. You're my friend and I will help you as much as I could, but I will never help you in such a way. For even contemplating of such an underhanded approach to secure your objective is appalling and unacceptable. A man of honor should always consider scrupulousness and decency above all else and endeavor to do the right and proper, even if disadvantaged, even if the odds are stacked up against you. For even if subdued by a superior force, you could still stand tall and proudly say that you did your best, and although you may have lost today, you will gloriously rise from the ashes tomorrow and continue to fight, for your integrity and fortitude still remained uncorroded and uncompromised. Alex said in a sagacious voice as he sipped some soda. You must always fight fair, you know. He then continued. Dude, I couldn't even begin to say how outlandish that was. Who are you, Spartacus? Mike smirked as he brushed off his friend's advice. I do realize that the statement was slightly out of touch with the contemporary milieu, but you know as well as I do that it is the indisputable truth. Alex replied calmly, though there is just enough tremble in his voice to hint that he's starting to get irritated. Slightly. Mike said with a creased brow, then chuckled. Well, I like the nano bomb idea better, if such a thing is even real. I think he just pulled it off from that cheap sci-fi show he loves watching. He then thought while looking incredulously at Alex. You're probably wondering if such a device does really exist or I just made it all up. Yes, they are real, Alex said coldly in a blasé voice. Oh great, now he's inside my head again. What is he, telepathic or something? Mike thought in annoyance. So why don't we put some of it on a certain someone's drink? Huh, will you help me out here, Alex? He then playfully urged with a maniacal yet comedic grin on his face. Well, that's an interesting notion in itself, but still no. Why not? You mean aside from the obvious fact that it's not a very nice thing to do? Alex replied in a pleasant voice as he tried to reason with his friend. Plus, I'm not gonna throw away $10 million for such a childish endeavor. He then muttered surreptitiously to himself. You greedy hypocrite, I know you want him gone too, you're just too cheap and don't want to spend a bit more on the process. Mike said frankly, pointing a finger of suspicion that made Alex froze in embarrassment and felt as if 1,000 arrows had struck him in the rear end. Hey, don't judge me. Alex exasperatedly exclaimed in a comedic chibi-like outburst. Yeah, it's kinda hard not to. Mike shrugged with a nonchalant voice and with a deadpan expression on his face. Amidst their discussion, Mike noticed Alex looking at the transparent glass wall of the diner, into the deep forest with a faraway blank stare as if something has abruptly distracted him. This, along with the latter's immediate demeanor which was unsettlingly stern and taciturn, has prompted his concern. As Mike perused more closely, he noticed Alex's left hand that was currently holding a fork. His forefinger, however, was moving in wavering and flickering motions as if drawing some enigmatic symbol into the air, of which by reasons yet obscured has suddenly became frigid as polar ice and electrifying as if in close proximity to a colossal Van de Graaff generator. Dude, is there something wrong? Mike then inquired. Nothing, a few minor complications, but on the whole everything's fine, just fine. Alex replied with a fox-like smile emanating from his face and a cunning, sardonic gleam in his iridescent sapphire blue eyes, like that of a prankster who just victoriously pulled a mischievous prank. He then clenched his fist and abruptly raised it like a boxer doing an uppercut and chuckled in a somewhat sadistic tone. That would teach him to keep his hands for himself. He then murmured inaudibly. You're really weird. You know that. Mike said while eyeing Alex suspiciously, thinking that the latter has just came up with some grand scheme to take Bella for himself. Yeah, that's why we're friends. It's our common denominator. Alex said in a monotonous voice with a deadpan expression on his face as he looked incredulously back to Mike. That and our mutual dislike for a certain ginger named Edward Cullen. Mike said as he raised his cup and made toast with Alex, who concurred with every word he said. Cullen's residence. This is incredible. It's so light and open, you know. Bella commented as she ingresses the Cullens' abode. She was expecting at a dark Transylvanian-styled castle like those in the movies, or at least some Gothic ambiance, but instead saw a fairly modern house with postmodern interior design, complete with transparent glass walls from which south side was a picturesque view of the Kalawa River. What did you expect? Coffins and dungeons and moats? Edward replied, smiling. No, not the moats, Bella said, chuckling. Not the moats. Edward echoed, chuckling as well. This is the one place we don't have to hide. He then continued as they climb up the stairs to the kitchen where Bella could hear opera music playing along with some sort of cooking show on TV. In the kitchen, which was located on the second floor of the house, Carlisle, Esme and Emmett decided to go the extra mile and prepare something for Bella, while Rosalie was standing near the counter, somewhat irritated. Is she even Italian? Rosalie inquired with an air of annoyance in her voice. Her name is Bella. Emmett replied while chopping some radish for the salad. I'm sure she'll love it, no matter what. Carlisle supplemented. Get a whiff of that. Rosalie exasperatedly sighed. Here comes the human. She then continued with a sarcastic and sing-song tone while everyone aside from her was excited to see their guest. A few moments thereafter Edward and Bella walked inside the kitchen where Esme warmly greeted them. Bella, we're making Italiano for you. She then said eagerly. Bella, this is Esme. My mother for all intents and purposes. Edward introduced Esme to Bella while behind her were three persons. There was Emmett who looked very friendly and waved amicably at them with a knife in his hand, Rosalie who looked at her coldly, and Carlyle who was her attending physician during that truck incident a couple of months ago. Buongiorno, Bella nervously greeted them. Technically she said good morning in Italian though it was already late in the afternoon by that time. Also, she can't help but wonder where Alice, Jasper and Naruto were. Molte bene. Esme replied, smiling kindly. Well, that answered Rosalie's earlier question. She's not Italian. She then thought. You've given us an excuse to use the kitchen for the first time. Carlyle said, smiling gently. Usually Naruto is the only one who uses this part of the house. He then chuckled. Yeah, what's up with him anyway? It's ramen this ramen that, it's so annoying he doesn't even need to eat. Rosalie scoffed. A confounded expression emanated on Bella's face after hearing it as she has no idea what Rosalie's was talking about, nor could she relate on the subject. He absorbs energy from nature so he doesn't really need to eat anything. He just does it for reasons known only to him. Edward whispered to Bella as Rosalie continued to whine. Now Rosalie, you know it upsets Naruto whenever someone talks ill of ramen. Speaking of him, does anyone knows where he is? Carlyle reproached her gently but realized that indeed he hasn't seen Naruto since the blonde left for school earlier. Who cares where that idiot is? Rosalie sneered as she reminisced the untoward incident earlier. Even slightly recollecting the minutest of its detail flared her temper. She then glared at Emmett who in turn just awkwardly looked away in hopes that she'd be much calmer when he looked back. I hope you're hungry. Esme then said to Bella in a hopeful voice, partly in effort to change the subject. Yeah, absolutely. Bella lied as she didn't want their hard work to go to waste. She already ate. Edward saw eat out of honesty but came out a bit callous and it earned him a glare from Bella. Suddenly they heard the sound of breaking glass reverberate throughout the kitchen and as they perused its source they beheld in pieces the salad bowl Rosalie was holding earlier. Apparently she vented her earlier frustration and dislike of Bella on the unfortunate bowl and its contents. She then stepped over the shards of broken glass and looked at Bella and Edward fiercely. Perfect, Rosalie said sarcastically while Emmett went over to her and tried to calm her down. Yeah, it's just because I know that you guys don't eat. Bella stuttered as she tried to explain herself and defuse the situation before it gets even more volatile. Of course. Esme interrupted to prevent Bella from feeling more awkward than she already does. It's very considerate of you. She then turned to Rosalie and gave her a look of disapproval. Just ignore Rosalie. I do. Edward sighed. Yeah, let's just keep pretending like this isn't dangerous for all of us. Rosalie retorted with a voice of ever-increasing intensity as she failed to control her anger. I would never tell anybody anything. Bella reassured them as earnestly as she could. She knows that. Carlyle said level-headedly, easing her nerves. Yeah, well, the problem is, you two have gone public now, so. Emmett said, trying to explain Rosalie's vexation to although he was hesitant to even finish his sentence as Esme silently called his name in reprimand. No, she should know. The entire family will be implicated if this ends badly. Rosalie continued what Emmett has restrained himself to further utter. Badly, as in, I would become the meal. Bella said, gawking. She again began to feel a bit of fear and concern. The statement however made the Cullens snicker and even Rosalie seemed to be suppressing a laugh. Hi Bella. A cheerful and sweet voice then said that made Bella turn to the balcony and saw Alice along with Jasper. I'm Alice, she then introduced herself as she walked over and hugged Bella. Oh, you do smell good. She commented that made Edward's eyebrows furrow. Alice, what are you? Edward inquired with an awkward expression in his face along with a creased brow but was cut off. It's okay. Bella and I are gonna be great friends. Alice then assured him as she already saw it on her visions. Sorry, Jasper's our newest vegetarian. It's a little difficult for him. Carlyle said. Pleasure to meet you. Jasper said politely, inordinately restraining himself to give in to his vampiric instincts. It's okay, Jasper. Alice said, smiling, you won't hurt her. She then tried to assure everyone but it came out quite different and once again the awkward expression on Edward's face was priceless. All right, I'm gonna take you on a tour of the rest of the house. Edward then told Bella and walked away with her but turned one last time to his family and rolled his eyes at them, though he was thankful that Naruto wasn't there lest it would be far much awkward, not to mention embarrassing as he was absolutely certain that the blonde won't be able to resist teasing him. Finally, away from the presence of the prying coven members, Bella and Edward then felt their passion reignite. Under the music of Clair de Lune their eyes once again locked and their souls about to converge. Bella, Edward sighed ardently in a velvety voice as he held Bella's hands gently and kissed it. It made Bella blush slightly, it mesmerized her and she was captivated and enthralled into dreamlike equanimity, drawing her ever so closer to his lips like a powerful current to a helpless ship. Verily, it would seem that everything is perfect and that day was made for the tryst of lovers. Out of sudden, a small stone the size of a golf ball seemingly shot itself out nowhere and hit Edward in the temple with such force that it nearly knocked him out. Wrath quickly became the predominant emotion as he recovered from the daze. Who's there? Edward lividly demanded to know the identity of the one who pelted him maliciously. At first he thought that Naruto was responsible but realized that though the blonde can be annoying at times he would never do such a thing. With his vampiric speed he then quickly moved a considerable distance from his room and into the river banks that was abundant with clustering boulders as he deducted that such a place would be the likely origins of the projectile that callously struck him. The azure sky then suddenly turned dun and ominous. In the midst of which, the sun was clearly visible and it was burning like a great crimson ember. Then something even stranger occurred. The rocks and boulders on the riverbanks levitated and was hurled to Edward which he was able to avoid flawlessly. Is that all you got? Edward exclaimed, as if challenging the invisible entities that were flinging these boulders at him. Then, as if response, the piano resting on the living room at the second floor of the Cullen's house was dragooned towards Edward with incredible speeds that he wasn't able to avoid it, crashing upon impact with a loud crunch as the vampire was sandwiched amidst it in a large rock. Owing to the sturdiness of a vampire's physiology, the injuries Edward sustained wasn't fatal but it was indeed extremely agonizing that everyone saw how the former came out of the creaking wreck with an unmistakable expression of pain in his face. Edward, what happened? Esme maternally inquired with a mix of both perturbation and cautiousness in her voice. I don't know, Somio. Edward stutteringly muttered in a barely audible mumble but was cut off when suddenly an awfully potent invisible kinetic punch slammed itself into his nether regions like a sledgehammer with a force akin to that of an angry elephant's kick, nearly crushing the family jewels in its wake. Edward, what happened? Are you okay? Bella gaspingly and frantically inquired as she ran towards him as fast as she could. Edward however couldn't utter any word in reply, only a droning groan as he held his crotch from the unfathomably immense pain that made Emmett and Jasper cringe. Meanwhile back in the forest, a few hours has passed. Leah finally awakens from her blissful sleep and beheld the saffron rays of the thickening twilight. Then as she looked around she noticed some folded clothes besides her to wear and the varsity leather jacket that covered her body from the elements. Naruto, she muttered, smiling gently as she caught his scent on the jacket with her newly amplified olfactory sense and remembered that he was the last thing she saw before strangely falling into an Elysian torpor. Leaning at the back of a large oak tree was Naruto. For reason he couldn't really understand he decided to conceal himself behind the great tree as he noticed that Leah was about to wake up. He was never really shy when it comes to girls but it was somewhat a different case this time. He was sweating, his heart was pounding and beating irrepressibly, and butterflies fluttered inside his stomach. He then put on his monster headphones and decided to play some tunes to ease his nerves but whether it is by anxiety-induced clumsiness or by fate's clever design, his phone fell from his hand and the headphone connector pulled out from its socket causing the former device to play the song in its full volume for Leah to hear. Here we go, come with me. There's a world out there that we should see. Take my hand, close your eyes. With you right here, I'm a rocketeer. Let's fly, 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 fly. Up here we go, go. The song was Rocketeer by Far East Movement, and as it played both of their hearts connected as if they were beating in sync with each other and Naruto felt a love for Leah that was the same he felt thousands of years ago for Hinata. Thank you Naruto. Leah said as she closed her eyes and tears raced to her face out of happiness for at that very moment. And though unintentional, Naruto made her forget the agony that burdened her so much and at the same time made her realize her self-worth. Go get her kid, Kurama said in encouragement. The fox was grinning, genuinely happy for his Jinchuriki. The gentle rays of the setting sun shined onto the maiden who was once again filled with hope as she sat on the autumn-perfumed grass while the noble yet unseen hero watched vigilantly like a silent sentinel behind the shadows until the right time has come for him to reveal himself and profess his love. It was indeed a splendorous and heartwarming scene, and if ever a painter would skillfully render the image on canvas, it would be a masterpiece. The twilight skies were painted with the vivid shades of gold and crimson that rivaled the finest of imperial tapestries in its aesthetic splendor and breathtaking magnificence. In the woodlands that bordered the cloudy town of Forks, amidst the glade where the dappled shadows of the clustered trees whose leaves were reddened by the changing season and by the ember-like luminescence of the autumnal sun is where Naruto and Lia were. Awkwardly anticipating and perusing each other in silence not only with their superhumanly enhanced senses but also with the perdurable and mysterious bond of their linked hearts that withstood the stormy centuries and the passing of innumerable mundane lifespans. You can come out now, Naruto. Why are you hiding anyway? Lia broke the silence. Are you fully dressed yet? Naruto replied awkwardly behind the broad trunk of a great oak, subtly reminding her that she's still in her birthday suit. It was indeed strange, his time-dampened perverted tendencies seemed to have been subdued completely and was supplanted by a chivalrous demeanor that was ordinarily uncharacteristic of the shinobi. Lia blushed, realizing she's still naked. She then took the clothes on the ground and wore them as swiftly as she could. Okay, I'm presentable, she said, awkwardly and a bit embarrassed. Suddenly Naruto was filled with a foreboding apprehension as the seal in his right arm glowed faintly like dying embers, signifying only one ominous warning that forced itself into his attention. After his altercation with Raylime Shikorth, the shinobi opted to covertly place sensor seals in each of his coven members that were tethered to the main seal on his arm, acting as an extension to his senses and alerting him whenever any of them are in peril. Lia, you'll be all right here by yourself, right? Naruto anxiously inquired in a worrisome voice that confounded her. Yeah, Lia said in a tone that reflected the confusion brewing in her mind. It was more of a question than a reply, stretching the word in an elongated cadence. Good to hear, I have to go now, there's an emergency back home. Naruto said in a serious tone as he revealed himself to Lia for but a fleeting moment, then hurried from the forest back to their house. What just happened? Lia bemusedly muttered to herself as she slowly stood up and found out that Naruto was gone without any trace. Suddenly her heart began to beat in a quickened pace. At the ephemeral moment that she beheld Naruto being bathed by the intense saffron rays of the autumnal twilight, she felt a warm sensation deep within him that she couldn't explain nor comprehend completely. As if the shinobi suddenly became the center of her universe and all other things became secondary or irrelevant. A strange yearning and wanting then ensues within her like an intensely burning flame fueled by the sudden unleash of unbridled passion. She then felt an odd but spiritual sensation or emotion that she could only surmise as love. She wanted to be with him and touch him, and become his protector, as if all the colors of the world slowly fades into gray for each and every passing moment that the shinobi is not on her side. Cullen's residence. Oh my god. Edward, what happened? Bella screamed frantically as she saw Edward lying on the ground with his hands on his crotch and groaning in pain. Suddenly out of thin air Naruto materialized like a stray thought that has been given flesh and form. What's going on here? He demanded to know in a strict voice. Someone's attacking us. Jasper growled frantically, turning his gaze in all directions, trying to locate the invisible attacker's position. Take Bella to safety. Hide, all of you. Naruto commanded in a stern tone while his piercing eyes scanned the vicinity but couldn't find anything beyond the ordinary. He was certain, however, that the enigmatic person or entity that attacked them before is the same one responsible for Edward's painful predicament. Time to go, Bella, Emmett said as he grabbed Bella by the waist and zoomed inside of their house as per Naruto's injunction. Jasper did the same to Edward and followed thereafter along with the rest of the Cullens, who deemed it best and conformed without question. The moment they saw the mirthless and piercing expression on the shinobi's eyes, they instantly knew that the situation is indeed grave and was nothing to sneeze about. What's happening? Bella questioned with a firm voice, but no one responded to her inquiry, for they all seemed to be anxious and some, like Rosalie and Esme, were downright terrified for reasons they themselves were uncertain of. Suddenly, Edward convulsed and screamed in pain as if pure and undiluted agony arced and resonated into every cell in his system, akin to being continuously struck by bolts of lightning unrelentingly without his earthly body expiring from the eldritch fulmination's accumulated destructive intensity, and he felt in all his tissues the painful pulsing of the thunderous and reverberating fulguration that was greatly amplified by its dark and unearthly nature. Everyone was ineffably horrified, but out of sudden, the pain seemed to cease entirely as Bella was just about to reach the limits of what she could endure from witnessing the horror of Edward's tortuous quandary. With what left of his former strength, Edward inordinately stood slowly as if his body was made of lead. His muscles were still aching from the ordeal, but the pain is now much more tolerable than it was just moments ago. Are you okay, Edward? Carlyle inquired with both concern and unease in his voice as he helped him stand up. Yes, Edward replied in a weakened and tired voice. What happened? He then inquired, not remembering anything save for the numbing agony. His consciousness was momentarily blotted by the immense pain of the all-out sensory assault he was just barely able to endure. For a fleeting moment, an ominous stillness was predominant in the air that was tersely broken as the wooden portals of the house abruptly swayed open in a creaking monotone and they saw Naruto in its threshold. The expression on his face was grave and stern, like a general who just came from the battlefields and witnessed an overwhelming scenery of death and carnage. Whoever or whatever did this to you is long gone now. Naruto said to Edward with a voice that, while serious in a manner, was more relaxed than it was moments ago. Sorry to drag you into this kind of mess, Bella. He then turned to Bella and spoke in a pleasant and reassuring voice. No problem. Bella said with a confused cadence in her voice, extremely perplexed and have no idea of how to reply. What happened? Jasper inquired. I'm not sure, but this could be bad. Naruto said with worrying seriousness in his voice, as if implying that the attack isn't the first nor the last of its kind. Gym class, the next day. Looks like Cullen's a bit more miserable than usual. Mike commented to both Eric and Alex with a sardonic grin and in the most deriding and mocking manner he was capable of dishing out as he saw Edward and Naruto with mirthless and weighty expression on their faces. Maybe things didn't go well yesterday. Eric speculated in a genuinely concerned manner, thinking that Bella's meet-up with the Cullens didn't go so well. Yes, that's good, Mike muttered as he grinned cunningly, while sinisterly rubbing his palms together like a villain who just saw an opportunity to hatch his diabolical scheme. I suppose they're just a little bit out of tune. Alex shrugged as he smirked cheekily. What do you mean? Eric asked, but as he turned his head to Alex's direction he saw that young man was no longer standing beside him but was strangely able to cross the other end of the gym at seemingly imperceptible speeds, and without anyone noticing it. Whoa, what just happened? He scratched his head, mystified and confounded. How the hell did he do that? Mike muttered in puzzling astonishment melded with a bit of inkling on how such a seemingly unearthly feat was achieved. Adjacent to the team bench area of the gymnasium, a good distance away from Mike and Eric is where Bella, Jessica and Angela were, with the latter two giggling like mischievous fairies, pumping the former for more detail regarding the dinner with the Cullens. That's actually it. There's nothing really out of the ordinary. Bella lied, her voice was quivering as she spoke. She did try her best to fabricate a convincing premise, but Jessica and Angela was able to discern the irregularities in her anecdote, along with the odd quavering in her voice, and became a bit suspicious that she was somewhat hiding something from them. Come on, Bella, we won't tell. Angela practically begged with puppy dog eyes that almost tempted Bella to tell her the truth. Yeah, don't be stingy on the details. Jessica supplemented excitedly, giggling. But before Bella could utter another word he saw Alex abruptly appear behind the two girls, flashing a dazzling friendly smile. Hey, what's up? He then greeted them in the same jovial and cheerful manner he usually sport. Hey, Bella responded, why aren't you at biology class earlier? She then followed up with a curious inquiry while Angela and Jessica just taciturnly blushed as they and the other girls in the vicinity contentedly ogled Alex, whose handsome face and imperious charms was only amplified by the gym uniform that fit him snugly. Emphasizing his well-built body, their eyes alight with the red lust of sensual desire and intoxicating elation for the young man was indeed aesthetically pleasing to look at, and his mesmeric presence triggered an ecstasy of primal and unbound euphoria to flow into their veins, captivating their essences into a state of supernal splendor and astral serenity. I wasn't feeling very well. Alex replied awkwardly, scratching the bridge of his nose. You do realize that you scratch your nose every time you lie. Right. Bella said with an incredulous look and a smile playing at the edge of her lip. But I have to admit, he's kinda cute when he do that. She then thought. What? I have never. I must say I'm a bit offended by that statement. Alex stutteringly said before he and Bella burst into a gentle and light-hearted chuckle. Is he bothering you? Edward suddenly burst into the background with Naruto like lightning from a cloudless sky and assertively queried in a serious tone. Scoot boy. Naruto scoffed as he dismissed and eyed the young man quite darkly with a somewhat smug grin on his face. Well, I have to get going now. See you later, Bella. Alex said sheepishly with a timid smile as he stood aside and tremulously walked away like a mouse that came face to face with the cat, giving the illusion of a sniveling coward. The pride of a dark god within him, however, was transgressed by their impudence, and the later was but contemplating the most unpleasant way of casting them into a sea of eternal torment. Both of you are so dead. In time I will tear you apart atom by atom. He then irately thought, clenching his fist tightly. Why do you two always bully him? Bella reproached both Edward and Naruto with her brows furrowed. He's not what he appears to be. Stay away from him. Edward sighed under his breath, though still faintly audible. I agree. He might be far more good-looking than your emotic boyfriend over here, but trust me on this one, Bella, you don't really want to be associated with that guy. Naruto concurred, albeit in a more light-hearted and quipping tone that made Edward roll his eyes out of exasperation. I wonder what girls see in him anyway, surely they don't want to date a guy with hair prettier than theirs. Right. He then hummed contemplatively, then cracked at his own witticism. I don't understand. Bella said with a stumped expression on her face. Her confusion then quickly converted itself into a curiosity that was bound to uncover the truth between the two factions' hostility toward each other. Maybe you would if you stop looking at his ass for a second. Edward quietly susurated, stating Bella's guilty little pleasure that made Naruto smirk out of amusement. What? Bella queried, hearing Edward murmur something but was out of earshot to be intelligible. Nothing, Edward replied with a hint of jealousy on his voice, his teeth subtly grinding at each other. Clearwater's residence. Sue was assuaged to see Leah in a better mood and much calmer disposition. Her daughter didn't took the break up with Sam all too well, and it triggered the latter to phase in her wolf form, causing even more complications. She was quite surprised, however, when Leah came home to their house earlier that day, clad in what looks like a leather varsity jacket that the latter, for reasons yet obscured, was quite fond of. She saw that Leah was tranquil and seemed to be genuinely happy, though she tried to hide it from everyone. Here, drink something hot, Sue said maternally, handing Leah a cup of hot cocoa. Thanks, Leah said in a gentle voice that was somewhat uncharacteristic of her. Are you all right? Sue then asked, confused. I'm fine, Mom. Are you sure? Yes. Well, I'm glad to hear that, Sue said as she hugged Leah, who the latter held her hands in return. It was indeed a heartwarming scene between mother and daughter, but out of sudden the moment was severed like a pleasant dream, dissolving like foam and with one's volition forcibly expelled back into the harsh clutches of reality as a solemn knocking on the door echoed portentously at the entirety of their abode. Sue opened the door and saw Charlie with a grief-stricken expression on his face. Charlie, what happened? Where's Harry? She then inquired with a trembling in her voice. Intuitively, she knew that something bad happened, though she prayed she was wrong. Sue, I don't know how to tell you this, Charlie said in a quivering voice. Harry, he then continued, but was seemingly hesitant to utter another word. What happened? Tell me what happened, Sue demanded. A strange chill ran down her spine and her composure dwindled little by little like a piece of silver slowly being corroded and eaten by acid. He's gone, Sue. He had a heart attack while we were in the forest investigating a report about a. Quote. Charlie gathered all his faculties to enunciate every word of the dreadful news with as much decency as he could, but wasn't able to as he saw Sue and Leah burst into tears. I'm sorry, I really am, he then muttered solemnly, trying to assuage their anguish as much as he could, but he too was overcome by the soul-crushing dejection and can't help but despond silently from losing another friend who was like a brother to him. Seth was just on the way home from an errand when he saw Charlie's cruiser parked in front of their house. As he strode closer, he beheld his mother and sister in a state of piteous sorrow. He saw Sue almost kneeling on the floor out of despair while Leah was hugging her tightly, along with Charlie, who was trying to allay their pain despite being grief-stricken himself. Knowing that something bad might have happened, Seth nervously ran as fast as he could towards them. Mom, what happened? He then nervously perused. With great pain, Sue told him that his father is dead. Seth was lost for words as he peered at her mother with confusion and unbelief, but it didn't took long before he realized that indeed Harry is gone forever. Sick at heart with the doom that impended his father, the dreadful news penetrated him with a pain that was almost unbearable and insurmountable. Tears fell from his eyes like cascading streams of melancholy. He then felt something ignite deep within his core like a great flame fueled by his dejection and sorrow, with its heat becoming intolerable by the second. He then felt an involuntary trembling that was soon worsening into an inexorable and uncontrollable seizure. The maelstrom of intense emotions gripped him, and out of fear and confusion he sprinted away as fast as he could. Seth, wait. Charlie tried to stop him. It's okay. We must give him some time to grieve on his own way, Sue said, placing her hand on Charlie's shoulder. She knew that the emotional shock would unavoidably catalyze her son's phasing, and though still grief-stricken, she quickly devised a subterfuge to prevent Charlie from following Seth, lest the former would be accidentally injured or killed, as the latter still couldn't control his new power and is practically feral at the early stages of phasing. As Seth ran, he noticed that the swiftness of his pace became far faster than what he was able to achieve in the past. Soon his muscles convulsed irrepressibly and he stumbled and toppled uncontrollably into the grassy slopes of the immediate meadow from the momentum of his acceleration. As he fell flat on the ground, he felt his bones painfully break into pieces and grow anew with inhuman rapidity. He then felt his body changing, his senses sharpening beyond the scope of any human or animal, that he was able to hear the heartbeat of a fox beneath its lair hundreds of feet from his location and caught its scent vividly. Seth, he then heard a voice. He tried to utter a reply, but his new wolf physiology made it anatomically impossible to form words. Confounded, he swung his head in every direction to try and locate the origins of the voice. He then saw a pack of wolves that was as hefty as bears, staring at him as if he was one of theirs. "Don't be afraid, Seth," the largest wolf, which appears to be the leader of the pack, telepathically conveyed to him. Its fur was black as night, and along with dagger-like incisors and golden eyes made it very menacing to behold. "We're here to help you. Just relax," it then once again communicated. "What are you?" Seth confoundedly queried. The black wolf, along with the rest of the pack, then shifted back into their human forms, and Seth saw that they were also boys from the tribe like him, albeit they were a few years older than he is. Eventually they were able to calm him down, and through their guidance he was able to take a measure of control and shift back into his human form. Phased amidst the lacunae of the mainstream reality and the super-mundane dimensions underlying it are three looming figures observing their every action, along those of other mortals that caught their enigmatic interest and anticipate how things unfurl. "Interesting," the first being said in an eerie echoing voice, amused. "Interesting indeed," the second being commented in a sensual tone. "What now, my master?" the third inquired the first. His voice was that of a teen boy, but the manner of how he spoke reflected a sophistication stemming from centuries of existence. "Now we enjoy the moment of relative tranquility, for sooner or later things will spiral down into utter entropy. And when such time comes to culmination, well, let's just say we'll have an abundance of scandalous amusements." The first replied with a demonic grin emanating from his unseen face. "Isn't that so, my new friend?" he then said in a voice that was hollow and metallic as his glowing azure yes gazed into the empty void. Suddenly a fourth and more mysterious being formed itself out of nothingness. Its eyes then snapped open, revealing pitch-black irides embedded with blood-red pinwheel-like patterns. Port Angeles. Days have passed since Harry's funeral. For neither reasons she couldn't comprehend nor fathom, Leah found herself in the ramen bar where she first met Naruto as she walked around the tourist-trap town to assuage her grief. Then the image of the strapping shinobi flashed into her mind. Her longing for Naruto was just partially elapsed by the turpitude of her father's passing, but now her yearning for him has returned and was ever more potent, like an advancing tide slowly engulfing the sands of an ashen shore. She remembered how the blonde's jokes and even mere presence could make her smile and bring her unfathomable joy and bliss of contentment that her heart and soul desired more than anything. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wish that idiot is here right now," she then muttered. "Who are you calling an idiot?" a somewhat obstreperous voice exclaimed that made Leah turn around and see Naruto behind her, his hands nonchalantly clenched behind his back while flashing a wide friendly smile. "Wait, are you stalking me?" Naruto quipped that made Leah chuckle with a bit of annoyance. "Wow, you're so full of it, aren't you?" Leah then replied sarcastically with a crooked smile on her face. "Just trying to make you smile, ya, no." Naruto smirked. "Thanks. I really need that right now," Leah said in a somewhat somber voice as she tried to smile. "I'm really sorry about your dad." Naruto consoled her in a solemn voice. "How did you know about that?" Leah inquired, surprised. She was then stunned as she glimpsed deeply towards Naruto and wasn't able to remove her gaze from his mesmerizing azure eyes. "It's a small town after all. Plus, I read it on the paper the other day," Naruto explained to her. "I see," Leah said, shaken off from her earlier trance-like state. Her voice suddenly became more somber, reflecting the re-emerging pain. "Tell you what, why don't we go get some ramen, on me?" Naruto offered amicably with a dazzling white smile as he saw Leah's sudden dejection. "Sure," Leah said awkwardly in reply to the relatively eccentric blonde. Her head was a bit tilted and there was an expression of partial confusion in her face as the gloom was suddenly interchanged with unexplainable happiness. Naruto ordered miso ramen as it was his favorite while Lia had the Asashikawa-style one, a relatively new addition to the menu. Apparently, both the shinobi and the Quileute shapeshifter were avid connoisseurs of the delectable Japanese dish and they enjoyed every bit of it. As the ramen's heavenly aroma and supernal flavor touched and caressed their senses, it would seem that all of the troubles and pains that plagued them were sponged away as they both enjoyed the experience and the company of each other. It is a strange thing indeed, but a much welcomed serendipity. Naruto. Lia queried hesitantly. Yeah, Naruto said, turning his attention to her. Can I ask you something? Lia mumbled, putting her chopsticks down. Okay. Naruto gulped. I wonder what it is. He then thought. Back at the forest a few days ago, you know, when you found me unconscious. Lia muttered, uncertain if she should continue. Yeah, what about it? Naruto said as he nervously raised his bowl and slurped the remaining broth and soba noodles. How much of my terra incognita did you see? She then inquired with a low whispering voice and in an awkward intonation. Flummoxed by the uncomfortably delicate question, Naruto froze, he was lost for words and couldn't utter any reply. Worst still, he felt a choking sensation and realized that he was literally drowning from the ramen broth uncontrollably pouring down his throat. Soon partial apnea kicked in that made him involuntarily and instinctively spat the ramen in a comical manner. Are you okay? Lia inquired, shocked from seeing the hot ramen come out of the blonde's mouth like a bursting stream. Naruto was about to speak when he heard another inquiry. Yeah, are you alright? Naruto then slowly turned his head and saw the chef who was dripping wet with ramen broth and a few strands of soba noodles hang from his face. Something wrong with the ramen, sir? The latter then inquired again with a deadpan expression on his face. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Naruto said hilariously while Lia couldn't help but laugh at the awkward scenario. Maybe because of the chuckle-worthy awkwardness from the earlier situation, Naruto and Lia parted ways with genuine smiles of happiness emanating from both their faces. That awkward day was indeed something to be remembered, for unofficially it was their first date. It would seem that all the problems that have plagued them in the past disappeared like an abruptly thinning vapor, and in its stead came a serendipitous exaltation, and both of them wished that the happiness would linger on, forever. Forks High School, the next day. The bell just rang and it's lunch. Students slowly emerged from their individual classrooms like a flowing stream and undividedly walked as they chat with each other on their way to the school cafeteria. Like a shadow, Naruto surreptitiously lurked at the school corridors, unseen and impalpable to the senses of other students, biting for a perfect opportunity to confront Alex. I know he's not an ordinary human, that is if he's even human at all. He then thought grimly. You were right about that. Kurama interjected, that kid is something else. He then continued, followed by a deep guttural growl of suspicion. Of course I'm right. Naruto boisterously exclaimed to the fox that made the latter roll his eyes out of annoyance. But what do you mean when you said that he is something else? Naruto queried back. As you know, I have the ability to sense people's emotions, especially the negative ones. But when it comes to him, nothing, it's like staring into an empty void. Kurama explained in a voice that was ponderingly hollow. I know. I tried to read his mind once, it didn't go so well. Naruto said as he ruminated the agonizing ordeal which felt very similar to the pain from a certain unpleasant experience in his life that he couldn't remember somehow. At last Naruto spotted his target as the young man egresses out of the classroom door. Superficially, the latter seemed to walk casually, unaware of the looming confrontation he's about to encounter. This was not the case, however, as the latter's cosmic awareness perused the shinobi's intention and he decided to play along, finding it amusing. Naruto expanded the scope of his Toten Jutsu to encompass Alex, then dragged the latter inside the janitor's closet, to have a little chat with him. What on earth do you think you're doing? Alex said in an outraged voice, pretending to demand an explanation for his sudden abduction. Shut up or I'll kill you where you stand. Naruto hissed in a calm but deathly serious tone, glaring fiercely at the young man. Hey wait, you're nachos, right? Alex said, jovially pointing his index finger at the shinobi. It's Naruto. The shinobi corrected unflinchingly with the same mirthless expression on his face. Naruto. Sounds like a brand of orange juice. Alex hummed. His head was slightly tilted and there's a perplexed countenance on his face. He's as insufferably stupid as you are. Kurama sniffed inside of Naruto's head in a deadpan tone. At that moment Naruto lost his temper along with all of his composure. It's Naruto, you dumbass. Naruto. If you get that wrong again, pretty boy, I will kick your ass so hard, I'm gonna create a vagina. Believe it. He then comically exclaimed out of exasperation, enunciating every syllable like he was talking to a mentally handicapped person. Ah, Naruto was it, like the Japanese fish cake? Alex then inquired again out of seemingly innocent wonderment. Yes, like the Japanese fish cake. Naruto scoffed mockingly, grinding his teeth together out of annoyance. You have a problem with that. He then sneered, his eyes narrowing on the young man, expecting the latter to say something stupid before he proceed to give him a bone-shattering punch in the face. On the contrary, I like it, really. Alex said tranquilly and with a gentle smile on his face. I think a unique name has its own charm, makes you more interesting, it adds a certain je ne sais quoi. Really? Naruto inquired, surprised. He wasn't really expecting any kind of praise. Yeah, Alex reassured him with a wide and friendly smile. You really think so? 'Cause people think my name is kinda wee. Hey, wait a minute. I know what you're doing, you're honeypotting me, aren't you? Naruto said. He was initially glad to have found what he thought to be a kindred spirit, but the expression on his face suddenly turned sour and his suspicious demeanor towards Alex suddenly flared up as he realized that the young man was just duping him. Why, Naruto, what do you mean? Alex shrugged. There's a strange cadence in his voice as if holding back a chuckle but is about to reach his limits, barely able to keep up a straight face. Oh, he got you, kid. Guess between the two of you, you're the bigger idiot. Kurama smirked. I'm glad you're enjoying this. Naruto sarcastically muttered back to Kurama. Are you okay, dude? You're kinda talking to yourself. Alex inquired, awkwardly. Naruto then grabbed Alex by the collar then slammed him forcibly into the wall. Don't play games with me, Alex, if that's even your real name. I don't think you're even human. Naruto hissed mirthlessly. I'm as human as you are. Alex said cryptically, with a crooked grin on his face. The reply puzzled the shinobi, for technically he isn't human anymore, and though he never acknowledged it, for all intents and purposes he transcended into a god when he became the Jubi's vessel. I'll only say this once. If you ever do anything stupid in my town, well, why spoil the surprise? But I assure you, it would be extremely unpleasant. He then threatened in a foreboding tone and with a piercing glare that was more than adequate to cow even the most battle-hardened warrior. Naruto was however flabbergasted to see that the young man's sardonic smile widened into a rather unsettling demonic grin. What's so damn funny? He then roared, pressing the young man harder until the wall behind him started to crack. Do forgive my levity, Naruto, but if you come to know me better you will learn that such paltry act of bravado is irrelevant to me. Alex smirked indifferently then started to laugh at his warning. Naruto was about to silence the young man with a well-placed blow but oddly slipped and tumbled over him. As if things can't get any worse, some of the student, including his siblings and Bella, overheard the noise coming inside of the janitor's closet and decided to investigate the strange clamor. They were all stumped however as they opened the door and saw Naruto and Alex in an ambiguously sensual position, with the latter's shirt partially ripped and was being pinned by the former on the floor as if the two were passionately making love. Ha! I knew it! Emmett exclaimed, breaking the silence among the continuously growing slack-jawed crowd. This not what it looks like. Naruto reacted hysterically in a comical manner. I'm sorry. He said he will stop bullying me if I give in to his demands. Alex muttered for everyone to hear, as if a victim that has been gravely coerced. What, he's lying? Naruto frantically retorted in protest. Why, you deceitful little bastard, I'll destroy you. He then turned his attention to the young man and comically wringed his neck with his bare hands then placed him in a headlock. Naruto, stop it. What do you think you're doing? Bella exclaimed as he pulled the shinobi by the ear and dragged him outside. OWW, Bella, wait, can't you see this guy? OWW, he's evil, can't any one of you see what he's doing here? Naruto protested hilariously as he is the only one who can see Alex smiling flatteringly and trollishly waving at him while he, Naruto, was being painfully hauled by Bella on the ear. The crowd was in shock and a bit scandalized as they could only see a traumatized and shaking young man instead of the trickster that Naruto was vehemently pointing out, for the dark god used his divine power to alter the perception of everyone in the vicinity, save for the blonde, clouding their very concept of reality and saw what he wanted them to see instead of the truth. You're a bad boy, aren't you? Lestat telepathically communicated as he observed everything, phased amidst the dimensional planes underlying the main reality, an ability among many others that was vouchsafed to him by his master. Yes, it brings me so much unconscionable amounts of joy. Alex smirked smugly. Like the cat that got the cream. You know he's going to retaliate. Lestat warned in a somewhat anxious voice. I'm aware of that, the expression on his face, have you seen it? So intense, so sure of himself, completely unaware that at best his efforts will just be a minor annoyance and would inexorably rebound back at him with desolating consequences and more pathetic after effect, but nonetheless it would be foolish not to have any contingency. Oh, I could almost see the endless spectrum of amusement we're going to have in the very near future, my friend. Alex then said complacently as he laughed in a frighteningly sadistic manner. It made Lestat cringe, for it was uncanny, knowing the deity's notions about humanity and the fact that the species only continue to thrive as long as it unwittingly serve his strange and capricious amusements. At the very core of his being, he has dimly hoped that Naruto would be able to banish his master at the final culmination of it all. I can sense a bit of dissatisfaction in you. Alex then turned his attention to his minion. No, I'm fine with it all. Lestat lied for fear of what would befall him if he speaks his mind. Alex chuckled to his reply, while his eyes glowed azure. Nothing goes in the skulls of lesser beings that can be hidden from me, Lestat. It is the nature of an immortal's mind. Nothing mundane can obstruct my vision, walls are transparent to me and darkness is daylight. You have nothing to fear, my friend, for my intention to the entirety of the human race as well, though it doesn't look like it on the surface. He then reassured in a hypnotic voice that seemed to sponge away all of Lestat's anxieties and be replaced with an unexplainable calmness. Time has progressed swiftly like whizzing clouds. For days the incident that occurred in the janitor's closet has sparked much scandal and controversy at Forks High School, and has become the primary subject of jokes and quips inside the Cullens household, much to the displeasure of Naruto. Things eventually went from bad to worse when he found out that someone actually took a picture of the awkward scenario and made it into a meme with the phrase Bello saying, "Forks just got a lot hotter today." No longer able to endure it, Naruto decided to erase and alter the memories of all those who witnessed his predicament by virtue of a powerful wide-area compulsion genjutsu. The only people who seemingly have knowledge of what had occurred was Bella, of whose mind was impervious to genjutsu and other powers that bend the psyche, and Leah, which Naruto decided to entrust the relatively embarrassing secret in detail not only to seek counsel and comfort, for he knew that the shapeshifter wouldn't judge him so hastily unlike everyone else, but also to warn her about Alex, of which was a friend of Jacob and Seth. I really hate that guy. Naruto madly exclaimed, throwing a flat rock into the river which skipped unremittingly until it reached the other end. Don't think of it too much. Leah said in gentle voice. Somehow, she found it a bit weird, for it was something Sue would say to calm her down whenever her temper flares. Yeah, you're right. Naruto sighed. Suddenly Naruto felt something lurking on the forest. Out of the rustling bushes a pack of dire wolves emerged. Leah quickly shifted into a defensive stance, ready to phase at any moment's notice. There were 9 of them, all growling fiercely at the shinobi and bearing their dagger-like fangs as a warning to him that they will attack if he won't leave immediately. Leah, what are you doing with him? Sam admonished harshly via telepathy. I love him. Leah answered unflinchingly. You are betraying the tribe. Sam roared, why can't you love someone else? He then continued fiercely. Leah was stunned for a second before he regained back her senses and answered him back. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he loved me at my worst, Sam, and you had me at my best, yet you chose to break my heart. She then continued in a slightly quivering voice that reflected the loneliness she endured from her breakup with Sam and the bone-shearing pain she felt when she found out his relationship with Emily. Her words have taken Sam aback and he wasn't able to speak for the longest time. I'm sorry, Leah. I've hurt you, he said in a heartfelt and wobbly voice. But this is more to it than that. He continued, regaining back his pragmatic seriousness and pack leader demeanor that puts the tribe's well-being above all else. Leave, Leah sneered firmly. This forced Sam to reveal what really happened to Harry. Leah saw how a group of nomadic vampires prompted Harry to have a cardiac arrest when he and Charlie were at the forest, investigating the series of murders lately. He and the other Quileute shapeshifters, including Seth, inordinately kept it a secret to Leah out of fear that she would do something stupid if she was ever to find out. Given her hot-headedness, rage might replace logic and it can be her own fatal undoing. The dreadful revelation devastated Leah, but she remained calm and tranquil, and didn't submit to feral rage, much to the surprise of Sam and his pack. I always thought that you guys were hiding something from me, she said, looking at the sandy-colored wolf on particular, which was his brother Set. She however couldn't blame him since her brother was compelled to follow his alpha whether he likes it or not. Leah, it is one of his kind that caused Dad to suffer a heart attack, Seth said, trying to convince her. His family is different, he's different. You know that. Leah retorted. They are all the same. They are monsters, blood and murder sustains their wretched existence. Sam growled. Let's go. He then commanded Leah using his alpha voice. However, to their surprise, Leah was able to resist the alpha voice, albeit with great difficulty and strain, signifying only one thing. You imprinted on him, a vampire. Sam said in a hollow voice. Finding it impossible to believe that one of their own has imprinted on a creature that was an enemy of the tribe. Excuse me. I'm not really a vampire, yeah, no. Naruto interjected. While initially shocked that he was able to penetrate their telepathic link, Sam and the rest of his pack just sneered and then decided to leave, as it is forbidden for a shapeshifter to kill the imprinted one of another. So you can read minds now? Leah asked with furrowed brows when she was certain that the other shapeshifters were gone. Sometimes, Naruto replied nonchalantly. I also know for a fact that you think I'm a stud. He then supplemented with a cheeky smile on his face. Oh brother, Kurama said, face-palming himself then shaking his head in disbelief. Don't push it, Leah replied with a blank expression on his face. Naruto chuckled while his face blushed a little from knowing that the affection was mutual. Come on. Let's get some ramen. My treat. He then said jovially, placing his arms around Leah. Port Angeles. Welcome to R. The chef jubilantly said, but his greeting was cut in a sharply broken cadence as he beheld Naruto. Oh great, it's him. He then thought with an etched deadpan expression on his face. While it is an indisputable fact that Naruto is his best customer, the awkward accidents caused by the blonde's antics is steadily taking its toll on his health, and he is being torn apart whether to relinquish his best customer and lose profit or retain him at his own risk. Hey there, all have a big bowl of. Naruto ecstatically said, but was cut off. Miso ramen with extra noodles and extra slice of pork. Right. The chef sighed. You know your stuff, my good man. Naruto said jovially. All have the same. Leah said, smiling. Before her first phasing she couldn't even finish a bowl half that size, but now it seemed that she could go for two. Excuse me, I'll just go to the ladies' room. She then said. That girl you're always with. Your girlfriend. The chef curiously nosed in a rustling hushed voice. Out of shock, Naruto involuntarily spat the water he's drinking into the chef's face like a bursting fountain. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. He then awkwardly and comically apologized. Yeah, I figured this would happen. Don't worry about it. I suppose, I'm kinda used to that. The chef said with a blank expression on his face. So, is she your girlfriend? He then continued the prying inquiry as he wiped his face with a towel. Naruto scanned in all directions to make sure Leah's not around. Yes, he said in a low voice with a sly fox-like smile emanating from his face. Ward. The chef exclaimed as the two high-fived each other. Know what? Order as much as you like, it's on the house. He then continued. The jovial disposition of the chef reminded Naruto of Tsuki and Ayame way back in the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto's eyes then lit up with joy that was almost divine and unparalleled. For him the words, ramen, and free, when combined is synonymous to heaven. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. He then said out loud ecstatically like a child on his first trip to Disneyland. No problem, kid, said the chef with a thumbs up and a wide paternal smile. Is there something I missed? Leah, who just came out of the restroom, awkwardly inquired with a deadpan expression on her face, seeing the not-so-common touchy scene, complete with sparkly background and all. Despite that weird situation, their date turned out exceptionally well and both of them enjoyed each other's company. The time passed by quite swiftly. It would seem that only minutes passed by, but in truth they've been leisurely talking to each other for hours. The day couldn't be more perfect for Naruto. He was with Leah and just ate multiple servings of the best ramen in town for free, but it would seem that the day couldn't get any better. As they walked into the many shop streets of the tourist trap town, the shinobi noticed something familiar. It was a black 2009 Porsche Carrera GT. Hey Naruto. Are you listening? Leah inquired. She was saying something to Naruto earlier, but it would seem that something is distracting him. What? Naruto replied, dazed. I said, do you mind if we check out this shop before we go back to Forks? Leah then said, pointing at a cozy little shop selling various trinkets. Yeah, sure. Naruto smiled, scratching the back of his head. You know what? You go ahead, Leah, I'll follow soon. Okay, Leah said, raising a brow. She then went inside the shop, albeit hesitantly, for there is something in the blonde's voice that spells mischief, and it made her suspicious. When he was certain Leah was inside and no longer watching, Naruto then set his sight on the sports car in front of him. From its license plate, the shinobi was able to peruse its owner. "It's payback time, pretty boy, this is gonna be sweet," he said with an air of mischief in his voice as he deviously rubbed his palms together and a fox-like grin emanated from his face. Bella's house. Bella was anxious. Her natural inquisitiveness of the unnatural and the supernatural seemed to be her Achilles heel. As she musingly sat down on her bed, she saw her phone lying on the desk. For a long interim she stared at the device, then decided to place someone a call to assuage the curiosity that deeply burned within her. Her thirst for the truth has become almost unbearable, for she couldn't get over what Edward and Naruto said the other day at gym class. "Oh hey there Bella," Alex said jovially on the other side of the phone. "Hey Alex, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Carver Cafe today?" Bella then said in a somewhat serious tone. "Unfortunately, I'm not in town at the moment. Is this about our biology project?" Alex inquired. "Don't worry about that, it's good to go. I can send you my other half of our project through email if you want to check it out." He then continued, reassuring Bella. "No, it's not about that," Bella then said with a solemn voice. "Okay," Alex replied. There's an awkward cadence in his voice. "You see, there's something bugging me," Bella said in a ponderous tone. "Yeah?" Alex inquired, seemingly confounded. "What's your beef with the Cullens? And what does Edward mean when he told me that you're not who you appears to be?" Bella queried pryingly. "Beats me." Alex shrugged nonchalantly. "You know you could trust me, right? Please tell me the truth," Bella said, trying to convince him to spill the beans. "The truth? Well, if you've noticed the sudden spike in birth rate this week, that's because Valentine's was 9 months ago," Alex said in a seemingly innocent voice, trying to grab a random trivia to diverge from the real topic. "Not that kind of truth," Bella retorted in a voice that reflected her sudden exasperation. "I have to go, Bella. I'll call you later," Alex said abruptly, then cut the call. There's a strange noise in the background, like a starting jet engine. Bella sighed just as the call ended, knowing that she couldn't really get any proper answer from both sides. Her determination, however, didn't falter from the strangeness of it all. On the contrary, it just fueled her suspicion that something is amiss. Bella's room, later that day. "So how's the baseball stuff going?" Bella inquired Renee over the phone. "Ah, Phil's working so hard, you know, spring training," Renee answered affectionately, seemingly touched that Bella was asking about her husband. "We're looking for a house to rent in case things become more permanent. You'd like Jacksonville, baby," she then continued. "Yeah, I'm kinda liking Forks." Bella hesitated at first but was finally able to say what she really felt, though she couldn't believe she was able to say it out loud. "What?" Renee said in a voice that sounded just as shocked. She thought that Bella was just playing a joke but then realized that she was serious about staying in Forks. "Forks is growing on me," Bella said genuinely in a calm voice. She could hear the laughter in her mother's voice, which was a natural response from hearing her say something like that. Could a guy have something to do with that? She then perused, maternally. Bella laughed nervously and stuttered. "Yeah," she then decided to finally admit the truth. "I knew it. Tell me everything. What is he, a jock? I bet he's smart. Is he smart?" Renee said in a voice that was a bit too excited. It would seem that her breathing became erratic and she was more like a gossip-hungry friend than a mother. Bella was then startled as she turned her head around and saw Edward sitting beside her. Mom, can I talk to you later?" she stutteringly said, flummoxed. "Come on, we got to talk about boys. Are you being safe?" Renee tried to appeal like a nosy teenage girl before the call was cut. "How did you get in here?" Bella inquired to Edward, confused. "The window." Edward smiled. "Do you do that a lot?" Bella queried again with brow raised this time. "Just the last couple of months," Edward admitted. "I like watching you sleep, it kind of fascinates me." He knew that telling the truth would spark a bit of awkwardness between them but nonetheless opted to be completely honest with her. Much to his surprise, however, when he saw Bella smile after hearing him say it. Bella felt something she couldn't explain as her eyes locked with Edward's. She felt a sublime bliss, as if time slowed down and she could hear the sound of her own heartbeat that suddenly quickened at a faster pace. "I just want to try one thing." Edward sighed as he gazed soulfully at Bella. "Stay very still." He then moved slowly and carefully, leaning towards her. As they get closer and closer to each other, both could have sworn to hear a faint objection, like that of a hidden spectator that bitterly resent their flourishing love but couldn't do anything about it but growls out of frustration and sigh in despair. However, neither Edward nor Bella paid any attention to this, for it seemed that all things outside them suddenly became irrelevant and insubstantial as their lips met. As they kissed, Bella moved closer to Edward and kissed him more torridly. Their bodies are now much closer together, with Bella slightly above Edward as she gently moved her hands to his back, caressing his neck, then passionately run her fingers on his bronze hair. At that moment it would seem that the disapproving observer was devastated, his mouth was gaped and gasping in a comical manner, and his teary eyes were as big as dinner plates from the disbelief and shock of seeing them on the verge of making love. Stop! Edward suddenly exclaimed as he leapt away from the bed with an agility that could have put a tiger to shame. I'm sorry, Bella apologized for nearly making Edward lost control. I'm stronger than I thought. Edward muttered. Yeah, I wish I could say the same. Bella said awkwardly, that made Edward look away. I can't ever lose control over you, Bella. Edward sighed, seemingly in great pain. Hey, don't go. Bella pleaded earnestly. Hearing her imploration, Edward couldn't possibly leave. He then gathered all his fortitude and walked toward to Bella's direction. There was an intervening moment of awkward silence, but then they once again started to talk to each other, first about ordinary and relatively common things, but later on they were able to confidently share their secrets with each other. Both found each other's company pleasant, as if one completes the other and vice versa. It was a moment of perfect happiness, one might say, bliss in its purest and most potent form, such as one would experience in the surreal rapture of a wonderful dream. Storm Ancestral Manor, Cardiff, UK. Get up. Our master summons you. Armand said coldly to a shrouded figure in front of him, reflecting his resentment and bitterness to his master's newest and favorite minion, a position he formerly enjoyed. The said underling revealed himself to be a tall and strapping young lad, possessing pale skin and black eyes, along a spiky raven hair with blue tints that hung over his face as bangs. He silently rose from his meditation, then turned his back on Armand, walking silently towards the garden at the mansion's western zone where Alex was. Arrogant runt. Armand scoffed as his colleague passed by him stoically, not saying a word. I don't understand why Master even resurrected the likes of him on the first place. He then thought begrudgingly. With steady strides the newcomer ingresses the indoor gardens where exotic botanical underbrush flourished luxuriantly. On the largest of the numerous man-made ponds, at the center of two adjoining bridges, stood a water gazebo where he saw the dark deity reading a strange-looking book. You have asked for me, my lord. He then announced his presence with a respectful but cold voice. My new friend. How are you? Alex said amicably. Ah, where are my manners, slave? There are cups that need to be filled here. He then called in an exigent and imperious voice. Suddenly, out of the gloom a hobbling skeleton appeared wielding a crystal decanter on its fleshless hands. It was swathed in tattered and worm-eaten clothes resembling the uniforms worn by the ninjas of the Allied shinobi forces during the Fourth Shinobi World War. On its head were withered locks of hair that was once a beautiful lively bright pink like the flowers of a cherry blossom tree. Eyes like flickering marsh fires burned in its deep eye sockets, and a blackened tongue like that of a long-dead person protruded between its teeth, but otherwise it was clean of flesh, and the bones glittered whitely from the sunlight passing through the semi-transparent canopy of the edifice. Like the underling before it, the skeleton too was brought back by Alex from the purlieus of the dead but saw little utility in it, thus the outer god deemed not to bestow any further enhancements to serve its menial purpose. As if in a calamitous mockery of its former mortal life, the skeleton heard and saw and felt with a similitude of the senses that it had possessed before death, but its mind was enthralled by a dreadful spell and recalled but dimly its former existence, and the state to which it had been summoned was empty and troublous and shadow-like. The skeleton then did what it was commanded like a soulless automaton, and one by one poured generous amounts of blood-red vintage on the crystal wine goblets atop a nearby odd-looking cedar table. Thank you, Sakura. You may go now. Alex said flatteringly, dismissing the macabre servant. To the success of your undertaking. He then turned his attention to his minion and handed him one of the wine-filled goblet for a toast. Master, forgive me for asking, but ever since you've awakened me into this new world, I have neither memory nor recollection of what I was in the past, of my former life before I died. The minion inquired with strange solemnity and in a hollow voice. I'm sure this is very confusing to you, but fear not, my friend, for your questions shall have answers in due course. Alex said reassuringly. But at the moment I have something special for you, a gift if you will. He then diverged from the current topic. Alex then opened his outstretched hand, which was gradually engulfed in an eerie iridescent aura of fiery bluish-white energy. And from his palms materialized a fairly long chakudo with onyx black hilt and a matching scabbard. It was wrought from a silvery unearthly metal that was tempered from the fires of a dying star by the dark god himself, and its edge was honed to the thickness of a single atom. The strange blade was engraved with unspeakable death spells and lethal runes from which powerful arcane energies flow, emanating as a shimmering cerulean glow when viewed by mortal eyes. The sword in reality however is the physical manifestation of a pocket dimension where Alex had the Sage of Six Paths imprisoned in its fold. The deity, through the use of his illimitable power and higher understanding of the universe then shaped the pocket dimension into a hypergeometric blade that was designed to vibrate across many dimensional states and at the same time phase in and out of the space-time continuum, granting it the power to effortlessly slice asunder anything that came in contact with its unforgiving edge, be it matter or energy. Take it. It will serve you well on your mission. Alex said in an amicable voice, but his eyes reflected the cunning of an entity that lived the passing of uncountable eons. There is this guy named Edward Cullen. I have tried many times to reason with him to stay away from my Bella, but his intransigence has been stretching the limits of my leniency lately. Bring me his head. He then commanded with a demonic grin emanating from his face. Ordinarily I would deal with him myself, but due to a recently mitigating divine edict of Yog-Sothoth, my father, I have to limit my intercession with mortal affairs, albeit temporarily. Until the passing of the multiversal convergence. Alex then continued tranquilly, though the underling could detect the subtle loathing in his voice. Go now. Show him what happens to a mouse that so foolishly challenged a cat, though take heed not to hurt Bella in any way. Oh, and one more thing. You'll likely encounter a blonde named Naruto. He can be quite persuasive, don't believe anything he says. Furthermore, avoid any conflict with him as much as possible, but if he should interfere with your mission, destroy him. As you wish, Lord Erelth. The underling concurred as he took the sword with both hands and disappeared like a shadow in the dark of night. Well, this is gonna be interesting, Alex said with a wide demonic grin as he returned his attention to the book he was reading earlier. Darn it, lost my place. He then said with a deadpan expression on his face, no longer able to find the page he was perusing in particular. Cullen's house. Great clouds blanketed the town of Forks, though it has not brought rain in its fold, a relatively agreeable weather by the standards of the wet town. It was Bella's second time to visit the Cullens and the situation seemed to be much better than the previous one. As usual, Carlisle and Esme were really wonderful hosts, but what she found most surprising was Rosalie. The latter, while not completely cordial with her, isn't downright surly or abrasive. She also noticed something strange with Naruto. He seemed to be uncannily exultant this past few days and an ineffaceable smile was etched on his face. You look happy, Bella smilingly said to the shinobi. Is it that obvious? Naruto inquired, a bit embarrassed. Yes. Everyone in the house answered concurrently with monotonous voices. Maybe too happy, it's weird and it's bothering us. Rosalie scoffed. And there's the Ice Queen we all love to hear run her mouth. Naruto quipped that made everyone laugh save Rosalie, who gave him an angry glare. Mind telling us what you're so happy about? Esme teasingly asked, smiling. Nothing. I just remembered something funny, that's all. Naruto lied, though the awkwardness his voice made the others suspicious. Are you sure? Edward said with a smile playing at the edge of his lip. Can we change the topic already? Naruto frowned, crossing his arms. So, Bella, how's your father? Carlisle inquired in a gentle voice. He's a little upset, but he'll be alright, I think. Bella said, shaking her head. What happened? Carlisle followed up with another question, concerned. Some kids kinda vandalized his new car while he was at Port Angeles the other day. Bella sighed. Say what now? Did you say new car? Naruto said awkwardly while an ominous chill ran through his spine. Yeah. Alex sold Charlie his Porsche in an unbelievably cheap price, last week. Bella explained. Fought. Naruto exclaimed frantically. His jaws fell wide agape from the embarrassing shock as he remembered what he did to the said car a few days ago. It's a shame, really. Charlie couldn't believe it either. He really loved that car. He took it to Port Angeles the other day to get some stuff for the truck, but as he walked out of the store he saw that someone spray painted it. It kinda looks like an extra spotty Dalmatian now. Bella then continued. She was rather stumped as she doesn't really know what to make of the unfortunate but ironically funny predicament. Ooh no. Naruto once again exclaimed. The shock, confusion and bits of guilt then melded into a singular and comedic facial expression. I have to go. He then said hysterically as he haraishined. Naruto, wait. Carlisle said, but it was already too late as Naruto already vanished. Okay, that happened, Japsar said sarcastically with a blank expression on his face. What just happened? Bella stutteringly queried in a confounded voice. Naruto can like teleport from place to place. Emmett tried to explain. I think what she meant is what's wrong with him. Jasper deducted while Alice just giggled for she knew what happened exactly but opted not to speak. You mean aside from the usual? Who knows? Emmett shrugged. This is confusing. Bella muttered under her breath, confounded by the utter strangeness of it all. The next day, Bella made her way to the kitchen to under the premise of getting something to drink but she found Charlie on the table drinking beer and cleaning his gun. Hey, got you another one, she said, handing him another beer from the fridge. Thanks, Charlie said. Bella's timing was perfect as his can was already running low and just thinking of getting another one. I got a date with Edward Cullen. Bella then blurted out. Charlie paused for a second. He's a little old for you, isn't he? He then asked. No, he's a junior, I'm a junior. I thought you liked the Cullens. Bella said, trying to convince Charlie by justifying her date with Edward. I thought you didn't like any of the boys in town. Charlie said, followed by a much-needed sip of beer. Edward doesn't live in town, technically. Bella said awkwardly, he's right outside. She then continued. He is. Charlie paused for the second time, and this time in a longer interim. Yeah, he wanted to meet you officially. Bella said in a hopeful voice. All right. Bring him in, Charlie said as he cocked his gun like an Old West sheriff about to carry out a death sentence. It startled and unnerved Bella a bit. Could you be nice? He is important, she then practically begged. Charlie then looked at Bella and draws a circle around his head mimicking a halo while looking awkwardly at Bella, as if her daughter is some crazy person. Bella sighed. She then ran to the door and grabbed Edward's hand to formally introduce him to Charlie. Chief Swan, I want to formally introduce myself, I'm Edward Cullen. Edward Said calmly and confidently, extending his hands which Charlie shook. Hi Edward. Charlie greeted, though there was something in his voice that subtly implied his sudden dislike for the vampire. Bella and I won't be out too late tonight, we're just gonna play baseball with my family. Edward Said politely. Baseball? Charlie echoed. He looked shocked. Yes sir. That's the plan. Edward Said, smiling. Bella playing baseball. Good luck with that, he said in a voice of disbelief. Though shocked, he felt a bit of pity for Edward and his family knowing how accident-prone Bella was, especially when it comes to sports. I'll take good care of her, I promise. Edward reassured. Yeah, I hope I could say the same to you. My daughter is a weapon of mass accidental destruction, he then thought, smirking. As they were about to leave, Charlie subtly called Bella. Hey, do you still have the pepper spray? He then whispered. Yeah, Dad, Bella groaned in a voice that was dry and rustling, reflecting her brewing exasperation. Bella paused in awe as soon as she stepped outside of the house while Charlie, who followed behind her, let out a low whistle. Behind her truck was a monster Jeep with tires higher than her waist and there are metal guards over the headlights and tail lights, and 4 large spotlights attached to the crash bar. Edward followed Bella around to her side and opened the door while she gauged the distance to the seat and prepared to jump for it. The vampire then sighed and gently lifted her with one hand into the seat. Wear your seatbelts. Charlie then reminded Bella and Edward as the mammoth vehicle started with a tumultuous roar. Bella was about to do just that when she noticed that there are too many buckles. What's all this? She asked, perplexed. It's an off-roading harness. Edward answered with a crooked grin on his face. Oh no. Bella worryingly muttered under her breath as she tried to find where all the buckles fit, but the process wasn't in any way quick. Here, let me help you. Edward sighed as he reached over and helped Bella. Bella was glad that the rain was too heavy for Charlie to see what's happening inside the Jeep, how Edward's hands lingered on her neck and brushed along her collarbones. She gave up trying to help him fasten up but focused on not hyperventilating. When the ordeal was finally dealt with, the Jeep then pulled away from the house and haughtily drove into the road. This is UHHM, big Jeep you have. Bella muttered. Her own inquiry reminded her of Little Riding Hood when she questioned the wolf guised as her grandmother. It's Emmett's, Edward replied, smiling. After some time of driving, the Jeep then turned into a side road. It was less than a road, however, and more of a mountain path. Keep your eyes closed, you'll be fine. Edward sighed as he saw Bella about to be sick. He leaned over to kiss the top of her head and then groaned, earning a puzzled look from her. You smell so good in the rain, he explained. Suddenly an arc of lightning jumped from cloud to cloud above them that was closely shadowed by a penetrating boom that sounded like a human voice implying something. What's that? Bella inquired, perplexed. She could have sworn to hear the thunder say, nasty pervert. As its roar reverberated onto the mountainous terrain the Jeep was treading. Edward, on the other hand, however, ignored the eerie rumble, having seen and heard many stranger things than that from Naruto alone. Then the road just got rougher. For a long while conversation was impossible since Bella was bouncing up and down like a jackhammer. Edward has apparently enjoyed the ride though, smiling hugely the whole way. Finally it seemed that they've arrived at their destination as they reached the end of the road. The trees formed green walls on the side of the jeep, and the rain was just a mere drizzle, slowing every second, and the sky was brighter through the clouds. Sorry Bella. We have to go on foot from here. Edward sighed as he got off the jeep. You know what? I'll just stay here, Bella said. Edward smiled. Before Bella could react, she noticed that she was already off the jeep and in Edward's arm, already setting her feet on the ground. Since when do vampires like baseball? Bella queried. Well, it's the American pastime and there's thunderstorm coming, it's the only time we can play. You'll see why. Edward smilingly replied as he helped Bella with her baseball cap and tucked her hair behind her ears. The baseball field was bordered by a lush forest and waterfalls cascaded from the crags surrounding it. After a fairly lengthy walk, Bella and Edward then saw the others. They then saw in particular Carlisle and Rosalie pitting of who gets the bat first, of which the latter won. Though strangely, Bella noticed someone missing. Where's Naruto? She then asked. Don't worry about Hai. He said he wasn't able to come because he has to make amends for a prank gone wrong. Alice giggled. Prank. Bella muttered. There was an air of confusion in her face. Then it all came to her. She remembered Naruto's reaction the other day when she told the Cullens about Charlie's car being vandalized. Could it be him? She thought contemplatively. It was very much possible since the blonde and the young man aren't really in good terms and Naruto might have turned the car into a Dalmatian thinking it was still Alex's. Bella. Esme greeted in a soft voice. I'm glad you're here, we need an umpire. She then continued. She thinks we cheat. Emmett said, smiling cheekily as he walked in the background. I know you cheat. Esme fired back, snickering. Alice then took her place at the pitcher's mound. It's time, she smilingly said, accompanied by a sonorous blast of thunder. Rosalie then positioned at the home base where Esme and Bella behind her. Alice then pitched the ball with full strength, swinging her entire body, but Rosalie's swing connected, producing a loud thunderous boom upon impact. Okay, now I know why you need the thunder. Bella said, astonished as it finally made sense why the Cullens need the cover of thunder just to play baseball. The ball then whizzed above Edward's head, making him twist and after it with speeds that was almost imperceptible. That's gonna be a home run. Right? Bella inquired, thinking it was. Edward's really fast, Esme said with a confident smile. True to her assessment, Edward was able to catch the speeding ball as it zoomed into the woodlands. He then threw the ball back to the field where it was caught by Esme and tagged Rosalie as the latter slid into home base. You're out, Bella said to Rosalie. Out. Whoop. Emmett exclaimed, exhilarated. Rosalie wasn't so happy about the verdict and glared at him then to Bella. Babe, come on, it's just a game. He then said, trying to calm her down. Nice game. Carlisle said in a level voice to Rosalie, trying to cool her temper down, before he himself stood at the home base and positioned into swinging stance. Once again Alice pitched and Carlisle was able to hit it perfectly with his bat, causing the ball to fly out of sight. Alice suddenly gasped out of perturbation. Bella's sight was on Edward and she saw how his head snapped towards the former. Their eyes met and seemingly something flowed between them in an instant. Bella then found Edward on her side before the others could ask Alice what is wrong. Alice. Esme said in a tense voice. I didn't see, I couldn't tell. Alice muttered nervously. What is it, Alice? Carlisle asked with a calm voice of authority. By this time all of the coven members save Naruto gathered around her. They were traveling much quicker than I thought. I can see I have the perspective wrong before, Alice murmured. They were leaving but they heard us. She continued while Jasper leaned over her with a protective posture. Let's go. Edward sighed mirthlessly, heading for the jeep. It's too late. Carlisle told him. Get your hair down. Edward then ordered Bella, which she complied without question out of confusion. Like that will help. I can smell it from across the field. Rosalie sneered. I shouldn't have brought you here. I'm so sorry. Edward sighed apologetically. What? Bella was about to inquire what's going on but was cut off. Just be quiet and stand behind me. Edward then told her while Carlisle and the others gathered into a protective line in front of them to meet the visitors. Then suddenly figures started to emerge from the forest. There were 5 of them, all having red that thirsted for human blood. One of them was a woman with bright red hair and was dressed in fur coat. Far left of her is a male with long blonde hair and dressed in a jacket that Bella recognized as Wayland's. The one on the center had dark skin and dreads that fell down his shoulders, and is wearing an orange jacket. While the two others following behind them seem to be much younger and more feral. Both are male, one of them is lanky and has short auburn hair, while the other is not as gangly but still fairly tall and has black flowing that reached swayed down to his lower back. Newborns. Edward muttered pertaining to the two. The strangers then paused a short distance away from them, then gazed at the coven with calculating eyes. The dark-skinned one walked in front of his coven. I believe this belongs to you. He then said in a voice that was laced with a strong French accent as he flicked his wrist, tossing the ball back to Carlyle's hand. Thank you. Carlyle calmly replied. I am Laurent. He then introduced himself. This is Victoria and James. He pointed to the red-headed female and blonde male. And of course the newest members of our coven, Zick and Colton. He then continued by introducing the newborns. I'm Carlyle, this is my family. Carlyle then said politely. Hello, Laurent greeted while the two sides continued to stare down sharply at each other. I'm afraid your hunting activities has caused something of a mess for us. Carlyle coolly said. Our apologies, we didn't realize that the territory has been claimed. Laurent said with unctuous solemnity in his voice and with the confidence of a courtier from a former century. Yes, well, we maintain a permanent residence nearby. Carlyle then explained, which made James' eyes turn to him, for the latter found it somewhat strange. Really? Laurent said, looking to James as if seeking some sort of confirmation. Well, we won't be a problem anymore. We're just passing through. He then continued, turning to Carlyle again. The humans were attacking us, but we lead them east. You should be safe. Victoria supplemented. Edward then noticed how James oddly sniffed the air with his eyes closed and seemed to be contemplating about something. The latter then opened his eyes and looked past Carlyle and directly towards Bella. Excellent. Carlyle nodded. So, could you use more players? Laurent said with a crooked grin in his face while the rest of the coven looked to Carlyle. Come on. Just one game. He then persuaded them. Though the situation was direly uncomfortable, Carlyle managed to pull out a subterfuge to let Bella into safety. Why not? A few of us are just leaving, you could take their place. We'll bat first. He then said, smiling. I'm the one with a wicked curve ball. Victoria smirked. Oh, I think we can handle that. Jasper sniggered while Emmett grinned. In truth, however, the former was using his pathokinesis to prevent a fight. We shall see. Victoria smilingly murmured as he and Laurent headed for the outfield while James continued to sniff the air, getting closer to what he's looking for. As if a cruel joke of fate, when James was nearly convinced that nothing was amiss, the wind suddenly blew and carried Bella's scent right into his face. You brought a snack. He then leered at Bella and at the same time announced to his coven members the presence of the human. Carlyle and the rest of his family then formed a protective barricade and saw how the other coven seemingly devolves from civilized to feral and animalistic. They were about to attack Bella when all of a sudden James was struck on his shoulder by what looks like a long sword, piercing his stone-hard skin from front to back and launching the vampire with such force that he was pinned on a nearby oak, flabbergasting everyone. What was that? Laurent roared while Victoria screeched in both shock and rage, witnessing the horrific fate of her mate. James was wriggling as he screamed in pain, desperately trying to remove the weapon impaling him into the tree, but to no avail. It was no ordinary weapon that pierced him. The wickedly slender sword seems to be a construct of glowing four-dimensional matter. It was coated in a glimmering field of cerulean energy that crackles and arcs lightning to the ground and into its unfortunate victim, causing much agony. Then, by the command of its owner, the sword flicked and slashed James into two like it has a mind of its own. Show yourself, you coward! Victoria screamed frantically, turning her gaze in all directions, trying to locate the one responsible for his mate's demise. The entire landscape was suddenly filled with a dense unearthly fog, and darkness fluttered in the air like a celestial shadow steadily quenching the sun's light. Out of the mists opened a great luminous chasm that seemed to ignore the laws of physics as it distorts and warped the fabric of space-time. From the portal emerged Lestat, Armand and the new underling who was wearing an eerie-looking mask. What are they? Bella gaspingly inquired. They are vampires, but of a different lineage. Unlike us, they can only walk during the night, for daylight is lethal to them. Furthermore, as they grow older they become stronger and more powerful. Given what they've just displayed, I reckon that they must be ancient. Carlyle explained with a trembling voice from the trepidation of beholding the strange creatures. The rest of James' coven heard Carlyle and attempted to flee, but was slaughtered instantly by Lestat and Armand by virtue of their killing gift and fire gift that has been enhanced by their master's power to the point of lethal perfection. I bid you greeting in the name of the gods, Lestat said amicably with a seemingly friendly smile. Thank you for assisting us back there. Carlyle said with a gentle smile on his face, extremely careful not to offend the trio. I'm afraid that's not we're here. Armand said in a demeanor that was like an average teen but much refined. Bella was fascinated as she gazed at them, especially at Armand who looked like a very good-looking teenage boy, no older than Jacob. Though unknown to them he is in fact the eldest of the three, being half a millennia old. The one with the mask held out his hand and the Chakudo flew and returned to his grasp. He then pointed the sword to Edward and began to spoke in a stern and cold voice that petrified Bella and the Cullens. Edward Cullen, by decree of our master, the outer god Erelf, you shall die in disgrace by the power of my blade. With blinding speed he then moved to decapitate Edward but before his attack was able to connect Naruto Hiraishined and parried his sword with a kunai he coated with his golden shroud of six-path chakra. Oh no you don't. Naruto exclaimed with a mocking smirk. The expression on his face then suddenly became serious as he saw the chakra coating his kunai flicker and snuff like a feeble flame that has been blown away by the overpowering winds of darkness. Damn, that's a nice toy you have there. He then said in awe, inspecting his kunai that has been cleanly cut by the enemy's blade. The masked man however, remained taciturn and prepared for another attack, this time aimed at the shinobi. Naruto calculated his opponent's next move then folded his hands into a seal. Okay, try a little of this. Futon. Datapa. He then exclaimed before unleashing a devastating stream of wind from his mouth that has enough destructive power to knock out everything in his line of sight, blowing away large trees as if they were flimsy twigs. Kaiten. Gokaku no Jutsu, the underling also folded his hands into seals and exclaimed. He then removed his mask and expelled a massive orb of roaring flame. What? Naruto said in disbelief. Another chakra user. That's impossible. He then muttered out of disbelief. The combination of air and fire chakras erupted into a swirling giant firestorm as their jutsus met, causing widespread destruction into the immediate vicinity and burning the intervening ground between them into molten slag. Naruto however was more devastated and flummoxed in awe as he saw the true face of his opponent that he could only stutteringly mutter a single word in a shocked and gasping murmur. Sasuke. To be continued.